I was a member of the community council which agitated for the lights to be put in place.
Do the two members feel that the interests necessitate them leaving the meeting?
Absolutely.
Councillor.
Any other declarations of interest? Councillor Ferguson. Use your microphone, sorry.
Sorry. Item 3, I was here the very first time it was discussed, and then there was a site visit, I believe, and has it been back here since then? I wasn't in attendance that time, I don't think. Is it competent for me to sit and hear that?
Councillor Ferguson, you're actually on the list of those eligible to vote at that item.
I was just checking, that's all, thank you.
Councillor McKee.
Could you just clarify my position on that as well, please?
Councillor McKee, you too.
Councillor McComb.
Could you also clarify my position with regard to that?
Maybe you should read them out, the ones that are eligible to be here.
Can we do that at
well, we'll get to that item, yes, you like. Right. I've had a request from one of the committee members that item number 3 be taken at a later stage in the agenda, because he is actually involved in another council meeting at the moment to do with Shambelly House, and would like to be in attendance at that because he has participated up to now in the meeting and thinks he has something to add to the meeting. Councillor Geddes. Anybody else wish to say anything, or anybody otherwise minded? Councillor Gilroy?
Well, I just think we have an agenda for a good reason, and I'm not sure that just because a member can't attend at a time, it's a good enough reason to start moving it around. I just like governance advice on that.
Is that the discretion of the committee, Councillor Gilroy? So if you wish to proceed to a vote on that, that's for the members.
I would, because I think we should stick to the agenda.
Councillor Dryburgh.
Here, I think to give a planning application full and frank discussion and make sure that every piece of information is in front of councillors before they make a decision is the right thing to do. And I'm quite happy to second Alistair if he puts that as a motion to postpone until Councillor McCottery's here.
Councillor Geddes.
I already indicated, sir, that I would do so. Let me remind you, Chairman, that Councillor McCottery took the time and made the effort to go to the site visit. It's not his fault that another council meeting has been arranged for this morning, at which, as a ward member, he, as I understand it, has got to be present. And in these exceptional circumstances, as I say, that's the reason I've supported the request.
Okay. Councillor Gilroy.
Well, I have to say that's not an issue. It's all about choice. Make your, what's more important.
Pardon, Councillor McKee. Did you wish to say something?
Unfortunately, we don't always have the choice, and it's not easy. And if we can move things and ask for things to be moved, I think that's the correct procedure. The councillor has asked for it to be moved, and it's up to us to decide whether we accept it or not.
Clerk, we've got a motion amendment.
Chairman, we have a motion by Councillor Gilroy, seconded by Councillor Maitland, that we take item 3 in the order it appears on the agenda for this meeting. The amendment by Councillor Geddes, seconded by Councillor Dryburgh, is to take item 3 later on the agenda for this meeting. Is everyone clear about the motion and amendment? Chairman? The motion is to take item 3 in the order it appears. The amendment is to take it later on the agenda.
Amendment.
Vice Chairman? Councillor Dempster's not here. Councillor Dryborough? Councillor Geddes? Councillor Gilroy? Councillor Hislop's not here. Councillor Henn's not here. Councillor McComb? Councillor McKee? Councillor Maitland? Councillor Thompson? There are 2 votes for the motion and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 for the amendment. I do apologise, Councillor Ferguson. Motion or amendment?
Amendment, I'm not that wee clear, you can miss
I had
me.
you scored out because I had you as an apology.
Yeah. Okay,
Oh, that's cheeky.
that's cheeky, right, okay, absolutely. Okay.
I do apologise.
It's okay.
There are 2 votes for the
Amendment
motion. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 votes for the amendment. The item 3 will be taken later in the agenda.
Councillor.
Can I ask when it will be taken? I don't know that I'll be able to make it if I have another appointment.
Sorry, Councillor Gilroy, can you repeat that?
Ask when you'll be taking that item.
Chairman? Taken at the end or?
I would propose taking it immediately after lunch. Okay. Right. Clerk, could you read out the next bit, please?
I have quite a lot to say in a very croaky voice, so please bear with me. The Planning Applications Committee will consider each application in turn as detailed on the agenda. Case officer or an area planning manager or other appointed officer will make a short statement addressing the determining issues accompanied by digital images. Any late information, amendments or corrections will be reported at this time. Members may ask questions of officers following the presentation on points of clarification. For those applications which are in accordance with Council policy subject to public speaking, then the order of eligible parties being heard will be as follows. Third parties objecting to an application, third parties supporting an application, and statutory consultees objecting to an application. Then elected members of Dumfries and Galloway Council who are not members of the Planning Applications Committee. Such members should withdraw from the committee chamber after making their presentation. And then lastly, applicants or their agents. The chairman will individually invite those who have registered in advance to speak in respect of the application to come forward, sit in the reserved seat and make their presentation, after which they may be questioned by committee members, but no questions may be asked of members. When each presentation is completed, people should immediately return to their seats. After all the representations have been heard, the meeting is in informal session and no members of the public may address the committee from the public gallery. The Planning Applications Committee will then proceed to determine the application or if the application is a major development significantly contrary to the development plan or a national development agree a recommendation to be made to full council, who will determine the application. Decision notice will be issued after a period of 48 hours has passed. Chairman has been provided with a list of eligible representatives who have registered in the period specified in council policy. These individuals have all had their registration to speak confirmed and no other persons will be allowed to speak. Representatives have been placed in alphabetical order. A copy of the public speaking list is available from the committee officer taking notes of our proceedings. Representations on planning applications must be made on the basis of valid planning matters only. Certain matters are not normally material planning considerations and will not be taken into account by the council when deciding on a planning application. Representatives are encouraged to use the time allotted to clarify any points they consider material and address the determining issues. Representatives should not raise any new matters without explaining why they were not raised earlier with the case officer. Do not repeat what is in the report, as members will have already read the report. Presentations will be strictly limited to 3 minutes per person, excepting for national and major developments, which is item 4, which by their very nature are more complex, where the time limit will be 5 minutes, and the chairman has a stopwatch to manage that time. This should allow sufficient time for interested parties to make relevant points. The chairman will ask you to come to a conclusion if you take too long. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. So we start the proceedings with item 4, Mayfield, Castle Douglas, planning application for erection of 6 wind turbines, maximum tip height of 130 metres, together with associated access tracks, hard-standing areas, control and substation buildings, borrow pits, meteorological mast, and a temporary construction site compounds. Mr. Clapper.
Thank you. Just for some points of clarification before I present the application. The block plan that's in the agenda papers on page 19 and 21, the boundaries are drawn incorrectly, but I'll just point out that the block plan's only for illustrative purposes only, and it generally is correct. It pertains to the general area, but I'll show you the specific site plan that's been submitted with the application during the presentation, so you'll be able to see the precise boundaries on that plan on the board there. There's also another note, paragraph 4.63 in the agenda. There's just to clarify, we go to that paragraph, the part that states table 14.2 suggests that during construction, the proposal would have a slight, and then after slight, it should read slight negative impact on tourism, and then but a moderate positive impact when operational. So the missing words are negative and positive there. Okay, the site's located approximately equidistant between Castle Douglas and Kirkcudbright. More specifically, it's positioned upon the high grazing land to the east of the C1 minor public road between Roanhouse and Tongland. That's an image of the site plan in the submission, edged in red. You'll see, compare it with the block plan on page 1921. There is a slight difference. It shows the two routes into the site, the one coming down from the top being the one off the C1 public road, and the arm, if you like, going on the right-hand side is the other access from the minor road at Lochdugan. That's a typical turbine, 130 metres to tip, 78 metres to hub with a blade diameter of 104 metres. Typical Met mast, lattice tower supported by guys. The guys would have to be identified for aviation, for bird purposes, and the mast itself identified with lighting for aviation purposes. Not a great image, I'm afraid, but it basically it shows the layout of the construction compound on top left, the layout of a typical substation compound on top right, and then at the bottom is a typical control building. That's the site in the wider context showing proposed routes 1 and 2 to the site. The one in green, that's route, in blue, sorry, from the north, that's route 1, which leaves the A75 west of Castle Douglas and approaches the site through Roanhouse along the C1 public road, and it'd leave the public road, go up the existing access track around Billy's Bridge. The second route, which is in purple, would leave the A75, drop into Castle Douglas, go through Castle Douglas, down to Gelston, through Gelston, along the military road, and then swings north again on the minor road up to Lochdugan. Both routes will be utilised. In the report, it at one point does refer to option 1 and option 2, just to clarify the routes 1 and routes 2, and both will be utilised. That's the ZTV, or a zone of theoretical visibility map, out to 10 kilometres. What it does, it assumes a bare earth scenario and represents the worst case. In reality, visibility wouldn't be as extensive because of the screening effects of trees and buildings or other forms of obscuration. The yellow on this map represents theoretical visibility of 5 to 6 turbines, and the blue, purple of 3 to 4 turbines, and the blue, which you probably can't make out against the purple because it's closely related to the purple, is theoretical visibility of 1 or 2 turbines. Areas with no colouring would not gain views of the turbines. For example, the settlements along the coast of Glencairn and Palnackie, or Ringford further inland. That's another ZTV just showing a wider area out to 30 kilometres. Again, the colouring represents the same level of visibility of turbines. And that's a map of other wind farms that were in the planning process at some point at the time of the application. It represents those sites that included turbines of greater than 50 metres as requested by the planning authority. Just to note, since the production of that map, 6 of those sites have been refused. So of the 11, 6 have been refused, so there's only 5 remaining, either in planning or consented. Okay, just to take you through the images of the site. That's an image from the A711, which is the main road from the A75 to Kirkcudbright. It's in one of the principal laybys there, looking across the Dee Valley towards the site. Just so you can understand how it pans, the cottage there on the right hand side, that's Mayfield Cottage, and panning right to the next image, you can just catch it on the left there. So that's a view, those 2 views combined are a view across the whole site. And Barnhill Wood there on the horizon on the right, just about represents the southwest limit of the site. That's an image from the road to the south of Kirkcudbright along the coast, going towards the dune, and you've got the Dee estuary there on the right. The box there is an approximation, but it represents the extent of the wind turbines in that view on the horizon. This is an image coming round to the south of the site on the C1 Military Road between Kirkcudbright and Gelston. In this image, what you probably get is theoretical visibility of turbine tips, but not the full tower and hubs. This is an image towards the site from the A75, just so you can understand the context. The 2 arrows point to the nearest properties to the site, to the north of the site, High Arkland and Arkland Hill. And that's panning right from the previous image, so you get a full view of the hill from the north. Right, this is an image within the site. That's the existing farm track that will be utilised by the scheme. In this view, we're generally at the southwest side of the site, looking back northeast through the site. In this image, you probably get turbines 1 to 4 in the lower ground, in the grazing land below the woodland in the background. And there you've got one of the principal peaks of the coastal granite uplands there on the horizon, that's been Glencairn. And that's an image generally from the same position, looking down the slope towards proposed turbine 1 with the Dee Valley beyond. And that's the property just there on the right is one of the dwellings at Milne Third Farm. Right, we've taken a couple of images out of the environmental statement just to give an impression of the scale of the turbines in the landscape. But it should be noted that this shouldn't be taken as accurate, because to get an accurate image, you need to view it in a particular fashion on the original document. So this is obviously blown up, but it does give an impression. That's from Dungarry Fort to the south of the site. You can obviously see the turbines there, sort of middle right towards the horizon. And then that's another image. That's from a point above the A711 road between the A75 and Kirkcudbright, looking towards the coastal granite uplands, and you can see the 6 turbines there on the horizon. The report, item 4 of the agenda, represents a summary of the principal material matters relative to the proposal. I can't summarise that. It's a very extensive report. So having fully assessed the proposal, it's been found that the scheme represents unacceptable development that would have significant adverse impacts contrary to Scottish planning policy and irrelevant planning policies set out in the development plan. And the reasons for objecting to the proposal is set out in paragraph 5.1 of the report. Nothing else to add at this point.
Thank you. Any questions for the officer at this point? No? Okay, thank you very much. Right, we have a plethora of speakers on this particular item, and I will ask Mr. MC Glencairn, please, come forward. Yes? Tracy, could you show the gentleman where he is? Just before he starts, sir, could the clerk make an announcement?
We should have mentioned at the start of this meeting that in accordance with the council policy, the meeting's been recorded. So if anyone has any objections to their speech being recorded, we can stop the tape at that point. Could you please let the chairman know in advance, please?
Okay, and I promise not to swear.
Mr. Glencairn, you have 5 minutes, and I'll give you a 30-minute warning.
Okay.
30 seconds.
So it sounds like a good deal.
A 30-second warning. 30 seconds before the 5 minutes is up.
Right. A bit of feedback here. Okay, my name is Chris Blanton, and I live at 3 Little Sypland Cottages, Kirkcudbright, which is approximately 2.5 kilometres south of the site in question. Firstly, I speak from a point of view of seeing myself as an active and responsible citizen. I don't think I'm a crank. I'm not a global warming skeptic. And I believe that renewables have to play some part in our energy policy. However, I'm deeply concerned about the proliferation of very large turbines in Scotland generally, but particularly in Dumfries and Galloway, and of course, near where I live. I'm concerned about their scale in the local landscape. Obviously, although it's not a planning matter, I accept that, but nevertheless, people who live close by are very concerned about a growing body of research and information around the effects of large turbines on health and well-being as far as people living close by are concerned. I think I'd be concerned about all of these things, and even if, what I want to say is that in the context of increasing knowledge about turbines, the validity regarding their efficiency, their reliability, and their contribution to CO2 reductions is challengeable. So I'm very concerned, and I would agree with James Lovelock, who's the initiator of the Gaia principle, and perhaps has something to say for why we're involved in these kinds of discussions anyway. But he has said that large-scale turbines will desecrate the landscape pointlessly. So I'm very concerned about their contribution to the overall, but specifically in relation to this application, I want to say that I endorse and agree wholeheartedly with the conclusions of your own landscape architect when he says the proposed scheme is not consistent with the key aspects of planning policy. It was also mentioned by your planning officer, and it's at odds with specific policies within the Dumfries and Galloway structure plan and the Dumfries and Galloway interim planning policy and the associated landscape capacity study. I won't go into any more detail. I'm sure it'll be covered by other objectors. I did want to say, though, finally, that I applaud the council for having developed the interim planning policy, For ordinary citizens, it's important that we have a voice in local democracy, and the IPP and meetings like this give us the opportunity to do so. So I thank you for that, and I urge you to refuse this application.
Thank you, Mr. Blantyre. Any questions for Mr. Blantyre before he? No, you can take your seat, sir. Thank you very much.
You.
Next speaker I have down here is Mrs. Coles, Mrs. Penelope Coles. Mrs. Coles, I'm sure you know the procedure. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you.
I'll give you a shout, 30 seconds before the end.
There's been a case put forward to local residents that this development will bring about significant economic gains for the region. But some of the statements in the ES need to be challenged and put in context. There is reference to 100 jobs during construction. It's rather odd, as the previous application, which had 1 more turbine, would have created 50 jobs over the same time frame. It's stated that preference will be given to local people, something that even O'Herlihy's report to Scottish Enterprise doubt, as manufacture and erection of turbines is a specialist job and usually undertaken by the manufacturers. This proposal says that tendering for the turbines has yet to be undertaken, although they say they would consider obtaining the towers from Argyll. Now, most turbine manufacturers are located in Germany, Denmark, and the USA. And the turbines are 70% of the capital cost. Most of the millions that this project is estimated to cost will be spent elsewhere. Let's have a look at the figures for operations and maintenance. It says it will create 2 permanent posts, but it's not clear whether these are full or part-time and whether they'll be based locally. Monitoring is undertaken remotely, but it doesn't say where the SCADA system is based. Now, turbines usually come with a 2-year guarantee, but most frequently is extended to 5 years. Scottish Enterprise uses the industry standard estimates for repair and maintenance. A 2-man team for 13 weeks for 6 turbines, and this is usually delivered by the turbine manufacturers, their own specialist teams with electronic and control engineering backgrounds, not the local unemployed. The report by Verso Economics, worth a candle, a report on the economic impact of renewable energy policy in Scotland and the UK, concluded that for every job created in the UK in renewable energy, 3.7 jobs are lost. In Scotland, there is no net benefit from government support for the sector and probably a small net loss of jobs. Studies in Spain, Germany, and the EU suggest that the net employment effects are negative, with the costs to householders of subsidies outstripping the creation of green jobs. The disbenefit to the local community, to the local economy, mainly from the impact on the local environment and landscape, have not been evaluated in the application. The situation is that apart from relatively small-scale civil works and part-time short-term employment, the scheme will not bring about any long-term benefits to the local area, but it will have a negative impact for a range of businesses, the local community and wind farm neighbours. Dumfries and Galloway is never going to attract major manufacturing businesses, and over the last few years we've seen a marked change to small-scale businesses, self-employment, many in the knowledge economy. These people could work anywhere. They choose Dumfries and Galloway because of the scenery and the quality of life. Indeed, many, like our thriving arts and creative businesses, depend upon it for inspiration. Creating long-term stability and prosperity will mean recognising our realistic opportunities and protecting the landscape on which they depend. I also have real concern about the community benefit being presented as part of the planning application. It has no place here and it should remain separate. Promises of a very small amount of money per head of population over 25 years is not bringing about economic growth. This application should be refused, and one reason is that it destroys more economic opportunity than it creates. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Coles. Any questions for Mrs. Coles? No. Thank you very much. You can take your seat, madam. Mr. Hawker, please. Mr. Hawker, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'm an ecologist from Gatehouses Fleet, and for the last 20 years I've worked on scoping for and environmental impact assessment for wind farms throughout Scotland. I'd like to make 2 points, one relating to landscape and the other, which I consider more importantly, to health. For landscape, this application is for one of some of the tallest turbines currently proposed or in existence in South Scotland, taller than those of Robin Rig, 11 kilometres offshore, and the Clyde wind farm beside the M74. The current proposal lies in an area described in the Dumfries and Galloway landscape assessment as drumlin pasture and peninsula, areas of undulating open landscapes of pasture and gorse where land rises no more than 170 metres. If approved, the turbines at 135 metres will dominate this landscape and be clearly visible over a wide area of the Stewartry, including the Solway Coast and Galloway Hills regional scenic areas. So far, Dumfries and Galloway Council has refused 5 smaller schemes in similar landscapes, all upheld on appeal. Council should refuse this one on similar grounds. For health, infrasound, all large machinery emits low-frequency vibrations called infrasound, some of which may be at the level of hearing. Research has shown that the larger the turbines, the greater the volume of this sound, which is transmitted further than from smaller turbines. Low-frequency vibrations have been used in the past to detect submarines over hundreds of miles, and it may be implicated in the stranding of whales and dolphins. There's a growing body of worldwide evidence which links infrasound to a variety of health problems: headaches, tinnitus, nausea, dizziness, raised blood pressure and heart rate, loss of concentration, disorientation, and disturbance of sleep. The UK Noise Association recommends a 1 kilometre separation distance between houses and turbines. At Mayfield, 4 properties lie in this zone. The French National Academy of Science in 2011 called for a halt to all large wind farm developments within 1.5 kilometres of any residence. 29 properties lie in this zone. The USA in 2010 proposed a separation zone of between 1 and 2 kilometres, followed closely by Netherlands and Canada. New Zealand in 2011 recommended a separation distance of more than 2 kilometres in hilly terrain. 2 Australian states and 2 English planning authorities have imposed separation distances of 2 kilometres. Using the precautionary principle, due to the potential effects of the health of those living within 2 kilometres of the proposed wind farm, this application should be refused. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Hawker. Any questions from the members? No, sir. Thank you. Derek Hughes, please. Mr. Hughes, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Derek Hughes. I came to Kirkcudbright in 1970, and I've happily lived there all that time with my wife and family. I have watched over the years as Kirkcudbright has lost jobs from all sectors and was involved with other people in trying to retain jobs in Kirkcudbright, both in the public sector, mostly local government, but also health service, and the private sector. Kirkcudbright has lost many jobs, and recently that has been accelerating. I watched the town recently attempt and in some ways be quite successful at reinventing itself as the artist town. And in this respect, there are many jobs have come to pass in Kirkcudbright because of the efforts of local people, largely volunteer. And these jobs, to my way of thinking, and the livelihoods of quite a lot of people in Kirkcudbright and surrounding area, will be put at risk by this particular development and some of the other wind farm applications that would appear, from what I read in the local press, to actually practically encircle Kirkcudbright with wind turbines. Not just any old wind turbines, massive wind turbines. And if anyone thinks that people are going to be attracted to Kirkcudbright and the area generally as an artist town, or a place to visit with your family, a quiet place with beautiful landscape, you can think again. They will not be coming. Dumfries and Galloway, along with the whole of southwest Scotland, was for many years the forgotten part of Scotland. People whiz by on the way to the Highlands, and this has been generally recognised. However, Kirkcudbright has picked itself up, Dumfries and Galloway has picked itself up, and the southwest of Scotland has picked itself up. And I wonder why the Scottish Government, in its headlong rush to establish wind farms, have neglected the possibility that many more jobs will be destroyed and many more incomes will be lost with the course that they've adopted. It seems to me that, well, just recently, in fact 2 days ago, there was a paper issued by the Scottish Government in which the Energy Minister declared that 11,000 jobs had been created in Scotland from wind turbines. I would love to know, that's all you got, 11,000 jobs, what the actual jobs were. I can guarantee that 90% of the 11,000 jobs were short-term, involved in the creation of the infrastructure which would support the wind farms. But we stand to lose as a community really serious jobs and income and livelihoods, and be left with a lot of very large wind farms. The landscape will be destroyed, the major attraction in Scotland. I really cannot understand, other than for some political reason, that the Scottish Government, and the other thing that appeared in this paper was the Scottish Government aspired to be 100% of electricity needs to be met by 2015 from renewable sources. Now that is quite amazing. The majority of that will be met from wind farms, they expect. But what will be lost in the meantime? I don't think we can afford as a community, as a country, to just throw everything away. And really, it's time for the Scottish Government to look again at what it's doing. I am totally in agreement with the need.
Just 30 seconds, Mr. Hughes.
To get away from fossil fuel and the dependency on that. But this headlong rush to wind farms is just not the way to do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Any questions for Mr. Hughes? No. Okay. Mr. Keith, Mr. Alan Keith, please.
Good morning.
Mr. Keith, you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Okay. My wife and I have been since 1997 in the tourism business, offering serviced and unserviced accommodation in the Stewartry. I was also the founder chairman of the only independent tourism organisation, ADGAP, in the region, set up in 2002, which I stepped down from a couple of years ago. Our guests, we often talk to our guests, and we're well aware of the fact that over the years, customers have appreciated the unspoilt nature of this region. One of the most important things to them is the landscape and the unspoiled nature of it. Lately, the subject of wind farms and turbines has been a topic of conversation. And I can advise that the opinion of our guests is invariably negative. They don't appreciate giant man-made structures dominating the landscape with all the attendant industrial blight of transformer stations, pylons, access roads, etc. A high proportion of our visitors are relatively mature, both in age and in their understanding of the pros and cons of wind power. Mostly they perceive it to be the latter, the con. A fair amount of evidence has been produced recently over the last few years in respect of the impact of wind farms and tourism. Few people participating in these surveys have any real appreciation of just how large modern turbines are or what the collective effect of harm to tourism, the collective effect of multiple developments may be. Nevertheless, all surveys have shown that a degree of harm to tourism is caused by wind turbines and farms. The 2008 survey, quite an extensive and expensive job, was based on much lesser levels of farm development, which were predicted at the time. It still concluded a loss of 4.1 million jobs, 4.1 million pounds per annum, and 244 jobs in Dumfries and Galloway by 2015. Clearly, there's many more proposals for development since then. More recent surveys have shown that around 20% of tourists will be deterred from visiting regions where wind farms are found. Indeed, more recently, a survey by the John Muir Trust said the poll also indicates that high concentrations of wind farms would pose a serious threat to tourism in Britain's scenic areas. It is found that 43% of people in Britain who visit scenic areas in the UK for their natural heritage and beauty would be, quote, less likely to visit scenic areas with a large concentration of wind farms, unquote. Chairman of the John Muir Trust says the poll suggests that up to 17.5 million adults across Britain may think twice about visiting areas where the landscape is blighted by turbines. That represents a serious long-term threat to those areas whose economic lifeblood is tourism. Dumfries and Galloway is one of those areas. It would appear that as the public gain more actual experience of large turbines, they become more opposed to them. In this region, tourism our second largest industry. The effects of the recession, high fuel and transport costs are already causing harm. Many businesses are only marginally profitable, and reduced turnover can precipitate insolvency. We've recently seen closure of a number of businesses, tourism related, for causes possibly related to that. A so-called death spiral of regional tourism is all too likely. This development of 6 large turbines will be visible from many viewpoints and long distances. It will undoubtedly have adverse impact if constructed. And on behalf of tourism businesses generally, I would urge you to reject it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Keith. Any questions from Mr. Keith, members? No? Okay, thank you, sir. You can take your seat. Mrs. Lee, Mrs. Ray Lee. Mrs. Lee, you have 5 minutes.
Several objections have raised concerns over the possibility of adverse impacts on health due to low-frequency noise and infrasound in connection with this development's proximity to nearby properties. At 4.40 in your committee report, it states that, quote, the proposed turbines are of upwind type, such that infrasound potential is eliminated. I believe this to be incorrect. There are numerous studies and reports that confirm upwind turbines do emit infrasound. Even Renewable UK, the Wind Industry Trade Association, cites in one of their own documents that all wind turbines will generate both mechanical and aerodynamic noise and vibration. Further on it says, aerodynamic noise will arise at all frequencies from the infrasound range over low frequency sound to the normal audible range and is the dominant force. What is in dispute is whether the emitted levels of infrasound and low frequency noise could have an impact on people's health. There is rapidly emerging reports from across the world of people suffering the health problems in connection with nearby wind farms. The wind industry's response to the possibility of any health impacts is clear. There is no reason to believe that sounds from wind turbines could plausibly have direct adverse health consequences. Note the word direct. Reported symptoms include irritability, tinnitus, nausea, loss of concentration, disrupted sleep, raised blood pressure, and cancer. Even if the causes are indirect, through annoyance, stress, or sleep disturbance, the fact remains that turbines are causing health problems. The industry insists that infrasound has to be audible to impact on health, but research by Dr. Alex Salt may show this is not the case. There seems to be some misguided logic by developers that what you can't hear can't affect you. We can't see sunlight, smell carbon monoxide, or touch radiation, but they can all kill us. The denial of any potential health problems from the wind industry is following a familiar pattern of ridicule and denial, as is well documented in other cases, such as X-rays damaging unborn fetuses, smoking causing lung cancer, and asbestosis. All these are now recognised as proven fact after years of repudiation. There are now peer-reviewed papers on health impacts, and until more independent research is completed, it would be advisable to employ the precautionary principle and ensure much further setback distances are employed between turbines and homes across Dumfries and Galloway. Jane and Julian Davis from Lincolnshire settled out of court last year with the developer and landowners for an undisclosed sum after they were forced out of their home by excess noise and its impacts. Unfortunately, transparency lost the day as the settlement offered came with a gagging order, which is standard practice in this industry to prevent the true extent of problems entering the public domain. At 765 metres from the nearest Mayfield turbine, which could be reduced to 665 metres if approved because of the request for 100 metres micrositing allowance, the lives of the people at the nearest property will change beyond recognition. What is unclear from the environmental statement is for how long and how often local residents will experience noise, as there is a complete failure by the developer to put into layman's terms what these noise impacts will actually mean for nearby residents. The unpredicted noise levels also fail to take account of local topography, which will have an unknown impact. The ETSU noise guidelines were formulated 16 years ago when turbines were half today's height. They have never been reviewed as was advised within the actual document. The nighttime noise limit of 43 decibels is higher, even though the background noise is quieter, than is permitted for the daytime hours and breaks the World Health Organization's recommendations for nighttime noise.
You've 30 seconds, Mrs. Lee.
When submitted, this application listed 4 properties as having a financial interest. This has now risen to 14. Financial agreement is confidential, but I hope if any of these agreements include payments towards electricity costs of property owners' bills, that the consequences of these agreements have been clearly and carefully explained, as the developer will now be permitted to raise the noise levels at those properties to 45 decibels in accordance with ETSU guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mrs. Lee? No? Okay, thank you. You can take your seat. Mr. Keith Mycock, please. Mr. Mycock, you have 5 minutes.
Okay. I'm Keith Mycock. I live at Cookbury. This application has been speculative and ill-conceived from the beginning. The initial application was incomplete and in some areas plainly incorrect. This resulted in its withdrawal and resubmission. Even then, it was still awaiting a Hooper-Swan survey. The application should never have progressed this far due to many reasons. One, its proximity to the populated areas Rowan House, Gelston, Tongden, Twynham and Kirkcudbright. Some homes are as close as 765 metres to the nearest turbine. Two, the proximity to historic buildings such as Threave Castle, Threave Gardens and Nielsen's Monument. Three, the visual intrusion on Rowan House, Kirkcudbright, Twynham, Numbay, Scriel and Glencairn. Four, the sheer size of the turbines so close to properties and a dominant feature on the main transport route of the A75 and the A711 into Kirkcudbright. 5, the significant adverse effect on the regional scenic area, particularly from the west side of the River Dee and Kirkcudbright Bay. This application is far too ambitious in size and completely in the wrong place, and will cause untold damage to a large and important part of the stewardship. Right at the very beginning of the scoping process in 2009, SNH gave its opinion on the proposal, and I quote, SNH has serious concerns as to suitability of this site for the construction of a wind farm on any scale. I would have thought the applicant should have taken heed of this comment and terminated the application at that point. Dumfries and Galloway is in the process of sacrificing large areas to wind farm development. There are already over 1,100 large turbines at various stages proposed in the planning system. These areas are mainly to the north and west of the county, but they're starting to encroach southwards, with the gaps being filled in with further applications, forming vast blocks of wind farms. Now we have the first application for large turbines in the south of the stewardship at Mayfield, shortly to be followed by a number of others in the Kirkcudbright area, notably Barcloy, Chapman's Howe and Knockendurrock. This last proposed has even higher turbines at 136 metres. It is vital that large turbines don't get a foothold in this sensitive populated area. If they do, we could end up with a serious situation with a spread east and west along the Solway coastal areas. I would finish by stating that the size of the Mayfield turbines should not be the sole reason for rejecting this application. As I've quoted before, the SNH questioned the suitability of a wind farm on any scale in this location. A firm commitment to compliance with the interim planning policy is required, and its future transition into the local development plan without reduction in the capability to manage the spread of wind turbines on a structured, rational, robust and up-to-date basis. I strongly endorse the Planning Officer's recommendation to refuse this application.
Thank you, Mr Mycock. Any questions from members? No. Thank you very much, sir. You can take your seat. Mrs Olive Repton, please. Mrs Repton, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. I am deeply concerned regarding the noise aspect of the turbines proposed in this application. I understand there are 29 homes within 2 kilometres of Mayfield, 16 of these within 1 kilometre. It is my submission that these separation distances are utterly unacceptable. I am able to speak from personal experience regarding the effect on our daily lives from the noise from the Dalswinton turbines just over a mile from my home. The quality of our life was seriously reduced 6 years ago by the erection of these 15 turbines of 125 metres. The turbines under discussion today are much larger. For those with no experience of turbine noise, I offer the following. Developers make much of how quiet modern turbines are. This may be true if one stands near to them. From a mile distant, they can be distressingly loud, like an approaching plane which never arrives, and neighbours around us assure me that they are still very audible at 2 miles distant. Everything depends on wind direction and topography. Monday past, the 10th of December, is International Human Rights Day. The Secretary of State for Scotland, Michael Moore, stated on that day, "We all have human rights. They exist for all of us, and they should affect every aspect of our day-to-day lives." He adds that we should all speak out in challenging human rights abuses, wherever they might be happening, because of our common humanity. The Scotsman on Monday had much to say on this issue, quoting the First Minister as having stated that the SNP does not have a monopoly of wisdom. I have noticed this. He has trampled local democracy underfoot time and again regarding his onshore wind policy. I ask the committee today to refuse this application, which would ruin the quality of life for so many people, and offer the following quotation with which we are all familiar. "Man's inhumanity to man makes countless thousands mourn." Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Repton. Any questions for Mrs. Repton? No. Thank you very much. You can take your seat, madam. Mr. John Thompson, please. Mr. Thompson, 5 minutes.
Thank you. My name's John Thompson. I live at Nether Lincolns, which is approximately 3 kilometres southeast of the site of this proposed development. Until I retired 18 months ago, I was for almost 20 years the Director in Scottish Natural Heritage who led the organisation's work on landscape, renewable energy and planning. Before joining SNH, I headed up the Planning Policy Division in the then Scottish office. This experience gives me, I hope, some insight into the matters before you today. Although I've in the past made written representations on a number of planning cases, this is the first time that I've asked to speak at one of your committee meetings. The reason that I've done so is that I consider this particular wind farm proposal to be a very significant one, and the decision that you take upon it a matter of great importance for the future of the region. The purpose of the planning system can be and has been stated very simply by the Scottish Government itself. It's to get the right development in the right place. This is particularly vital in the case of wind farm development, which introduces major built structures into essentially rural surroundings. As the report before you today rightly points out, Scottish planning policy acknowledges this by saying in paragraph 187 that the design and location of any wind farm should reflect the scale and character of the landscape. The location of turbines should be considered carefully to ensure that the landscape and visual impact is minimised. The Scottish Government's recognition of how difficult it is to assimilate such alien structures into Scotland's rural landscapes without ruining them was crucial to its decision to charge local authorities with preparing so-called spatial strategies for wind energy development. The aim was to provide developers with a clear steer as to which areas were suitable and unsuitable for different types of wind farm development. Implicit in this approach was an acknowledgement that the larger the turbines, the fewer would be the locations where they would be appropriate. Your council set about the task of preparing the required framework in an admirably thorough way. In particular, you commissioned a highly respected pair of landscape professionals to carry out a landscape capacity study. The report that they prepared was a first-class piece of work. It provides a comprehensive and robust basis for the policies that the Council has adopted in its interim planning policy, which are designed to achieve precisely what the Government's overall planning policy requires, namely the right development in the right place. As the report that you have before you makes very clear, the proposed development spectacularly fails that test. It is the wrong development in the wrong place. The turbines proposed are at 130 metres to blade tip, which is over 400 feet in old money, very large indeed. As the Council's landscape architect pointed out, They would be taller than any turbines so far installed in the region, including offshore ones at Robin Rig, and indeed taller than the Clyde wind farm just over the boundary in South Lanarkshire. As his excellent and nicely judged assessment goes on to argue, they will be completely out of place in what is a relatively small-scale, intimate landscape of great character and attractiveness. They will be visible over many miles and from many different directions, including several well-known viewpoints. Whether or not they would be overbearing in relation to any individual properties, they would dominate the landscape. Although in line with its current policy of scarcely ever objecting to planning applications, SNH has not lodged a formal objection to the development. Both the damning comments that it made at scoping stage, in which you've already heard quoted, and the serious reservations that it's now expressed show that it too sees this as an inappropriate location for a wind farm of this type. And indeed, if I'd still been working for SNH, I would have made the point that the turbines would seriously intrude into the view northwestwards from Glencairn. This, the highest point within the East Stewartry Coast National Scenic Area, commands a tremendous panorama over much of Galloway. If you haven't been up there already, I would urge you to go. If you've any qualms about rejecting the application that is so patently at odds with the Council's policies, I urge you to reflect on the fact that the guidance on landscape impact contained in the IPP
30 seconds, sir.
And the underpinning landscape capacity study has already been upheld by reporters in several notable appeal cases. This makes it all the more important that you do not do anything now to undermine these policies yourselves, especially when the size of the turbines is much larger than in these other cases. To approve the application would be to cut off the legs of this whole approach. It would leave the Council without an adequate yardstick by which to do future applications. It would open the floodgate to get more unsuitable applications with all the expenses, strife and stress that these would involve. And it would indeed call in question the whole ability of the planning system to get to grips effectively with this type of development. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for the gentleman? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. You've gone on at some length about Scottish national heritage in terms of, you know, what would have the effect, if you like, on the landscape and the people living around it. Can you explain to me why Scottish National Heritage didn't object to this application, but merely put in a number of reservations?
As I tried to say in my presentation, that is essentially because Scottish Natural Heritage now, as a matter of general policy, very rarely objects to planning applications. This was as a result of considerable debate a number of years ago about the relative role of a national agency like Scottish Natural Heritage and local authorities. And the view was taken that it was really for local authorities to make up their mind about these, and it was for SNH to provide them with advice. So that is essentially what now happens. And as I've said, in this particular case, I think the advice that they've given does reflect a very strong concern on their behalf that this isn't an appropriate development.
Thank you very much for that explanation.
Any other questions for Mr. Thompson? No? Okay, sir, you can take your seat. Thank you very much. Dorothy Waterworth, please. Mrs. Waterworth, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'll try to be brief. I'm simply a concerned resident. Perhaps make just 4 points in relation to the landscape to start off. The proposed development is out of scale with the lowland landscape. I think that's a critical assessment by the officer. It will undermine the special characteristics of both landscape character areas of the intended site, but especially the drumlin pasture unit. Given that drumlin pasture is a relative rarity within Scottish landscape character units, its protection from inappropriate wind farm development is all the more important, and the Council has received backing for this view in relation to reporters' decisions at appeal. The bottom line is that the proposed turbines at 130 metres are too big for both landscape character areas and for the landform. In terms of visual impact, It doesn't take much imagination to work out that turbines of 130 metres at a contour height of between 100 to 130 metres with intermittently turning blades will have a huge visual impact over a wide swathe of countryside and will impact negatively on various dwellings, settlements, routes, tourism and recreation business, and the historical and cultural assets of the area. The impact will be most acute and negative at the local level. This leads me to just 4 points about residential amenity. Given the scale and spread of the turbines, the proposed development will have significant consequences for the 29 properties within 2 kilometres, but especially those nearest and encircling the site within 1 kilometre, all of whom will view the turbines from below base height. These dwellings, in my opinion, will find the turbines overwhelming, and they will be most at risk from noise and possible health impacts. Not all of these have ownership or financial interests in the development, but even if they have, they deserve proper protection from inappropriate developments about which few will have sufficient understanding of the now well-documented negative consequences. Given that the developer applied for a 100 metres micrositing allowance, a most unusually high amount, the consequences are unpredictable in absolute terms, and I would like to draw Council's attention to this most significant anomaly. I'll make just a couple of points in relation to the economy. One of the things about the socio-economic detail that was providing in the application, I found illogical. I found a few things illogical, but one particularly. And the first, it's already been mentioned, the first application was for 7 turbines, and it was supposed to envision 50 temporary construction jobs. Note, it didn't say how many job hours would be created, so we don't know whether the workers would be employed for 1 hour or 70 hours. This assertion in itself needs very careful unpacking. But the key anomaly is that the second application, the one under consideration today, reached a conclusion that for 6 turbines, the job profile would be 100 construction jobs. So a 14% reduction in the number of turbines envisaged a 100% increase in the number of part-time jobs. I would suggest to you that employing more people to produce less energy is not a recipe for prosperity. There are many other ways in which the economic impact of this development does not stack up, not least because the economic case presented is one-sided. It neglects to mention any of the downsides of this scheme to the local economy, particularly the economic ramifications from the unsustainable and regressive subsidy regime, which is pushing more people into fuel poverty, particularly rural households where wages are relatively low, and travel costs make a disproportionate impact on household incomes. My final point relates to the Scottish Government and Council's policy. I would contend that this wind farm proposal undermines government policy and would breach several existing Dumfries and Galloway development plan policies and the approved IPP. As well, approval would significantly undermine the status and force of the landscape capacity study. Approval in this case would make a mockery of planning policy and create a precedent that would make it impossible to defend against other disproportionate developments in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mrs. Waterworth? No. Sorry, Councillor Maitland.
Yes, Mrs. Waterworth, I'm sorry, I did not catch what you were talking about. You said there was something anomalous that had been applied for, a 100-metre microsite.
That's right.
I wonder if you could just explain to me what you actually mean by that.
Well, the turbines can, at the developer's discretion, according to what they find on site, the turbines can be moved from their allotted position that would appear in the planning application, and they can move them up to 100 metres. So in actual fact, they could move them nearer to any one of the homes within that radius.
Thank you, madam. Any other questions? No? No. Okay. Next speaker is Mrs. Delia Wilkinson, please.
Thank you. Is it
You have
personal?
5 minutes, Mrs. Wilkinson.
Right, thank you. It won't take that long. I'm concerned that the rush for wind power that has doubtful positive outcomes will spoil the landscape in Kakubri area. Mayfield will just be the start of a rush for land and subsidies. This aggressive agenda is dividing our small community. Kakubri is the artist town of Scotland, and tourists come especially to paint and photograph the Galloway landscape. The A711 already has in its sight small turbines that have popped up like mushrooms, with their white blades flashing and catching the eye. I am concerned that the general public do not realise what is happening until it is too late. I do have a vested interest in this. I have, over the last 4 years, built up a small B&B in Kakubri, and I am worried that tourism will be affected by these turbines. If you let one wind farm, such as Mayfield, go ahead, you pave the way for all the others. As an artist, I would not go on holiday to a place littered with turbines, and I understand from surveys many other people would not either. I am not anti-green, but wind turbines and Mayfield are misguided intrusions into the beautiful Galloway landscape, which is our heritage. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. Any questions for the lady? No? Okay. You're all right. Mr. Robert Oliver, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. I came to give support. I didn't realise there'd be so many speakers here, and they have covered a lot of things very clearly, and I don't obviously want to do that, but I would like to just give you a flavour from the people who live there of what we feel it's going to be like. I have lived and worked in the Stewartry for 40 years. My children and grandchildren now live and work here. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. Thank you. I'd like to cover 3 points: context, landscape, and visual, all out of the report, essentially. But there are already, in front of the Mayfields, proposed Mayfield site, there are already 3 pairs of working turbines at 30 metres height, and they can be seen well above the trees and the buildings, etc. Nevertheless, their size and where they're sited, it's workable. The next context item I was going to use was the one which Mrs. Repton mentioned, because that's at, she said, 120 metres, I think. And as you're driving out of Galloway, you drive to Dumfries, there they are, they're always there. But I was going to say it's 15 k's away from the road. You drive past 60 miles an hour, don't really notice. Okay, it's gone. Then the same will not be the case with an industrial wind farm at the Mayfield site. You've got the A75 coming out of Bridge of Dee, it'll one side of the box, and then it forks left, and it drives down the other side of the box where the wind farm would be. And it's only 2 or 3 kilometres from this industrial site. And it's for those people who live and work, and indeed holiday, that's 10 minutes of their journey at 30 miles an hour, because it's a windy road, much of it, having these turbines there. They are going to dominate, as many of the speakers have said. It's 8 miles of road, so I think it's going to affect everybody. So that is context. Landscape, the landscape architect has recommended the objection, but I noticed that he mentioned Scriel in particular, and Glencairn's already been mentioned. And I think for the people in Galloway and living just around between Kakubri and Castle Douglas and all the little villages around there, to them, Scriel and Glencairn is an iconic pair of hills. You see them as you start coming home east of Castle Douglas, driving down the A75. There they are. And indeed, you do the same as you drive south from having been north of the Dee come down by that beautiful road down by Loch Cairn, and you think, there are Skeeling Ben Glen, that's my destination, very friendly, very comforting, wonderful. So that, and even tourists, I think, would say, here's a nice little hill, short walk up there, go and view the landscape. And that's what it does for us, and that's what it is for us. And it will really blight, as it said in the report, the coastal national scenic area, and it will blight north of the River Dee to all of us who love it so much. Visual, I particularly noticed in the report, para 2.7, which is the summary of the visual effects in the agenda papers from SNH, stating that the meaning of significant was set too high. And when I read the environmental assessment of the application, of the report at the beginning of the year, I was immediately drawn to these comments on the best views, and I thought they were out of kilter at once. And from Nielsen's monument, it says, being a 360-degree view, it serves to take the focus away from Skreel and Ben.
You have 30 seconds, Mr. Oliver.
Thank you. And thus the effect rated is medium. And from that point on, I thought the report lost credibility. I hope that provides a bit of meat on the bones for the benefit of the councillors. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. Oliver? No? Thank you very much, sir. You can take your seat. Mr. Wilson, supporter.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Mr. Wilson, 5 minutes.
I'd like to thank the Planning Committee for allowing me to speak today. I'm one of the landowners set to benefit from the wind farm application. In my opinion, the economic benefits far outweigh any negative aspects it may have on the area. Capital cost of the project is around 22 million. That will give jobs to 100 people during construction and 2 thereafter. The economic benefit of renewable industry, the renewable energy industry is a significant employer in Scotland. Over 11,000 employees and growing rapidly. My fiancée has benefited from this growth as she now works at Natural Power in Dalry. She's got a background in physics, and trying to find a career in Dumfries and Galloway with this skill set is rather difficult. Natural Power now control 1 in 4 turbines in the UK. They grew by 25% last year, and there's now over 250 people working for them, many of them young professionals who would have had to move out with this area to look for jobs. I run a dairy farm in partnership with my brother and my father. In the last 3 years, we've grown, we've doubled in size. We've gone from employing 10 people to now employing 20 people, all of whom live with their families in the area. The businesses we use to run our dairy farm are all local businesses. We sell our milk in Dumfries and Galloway. It's our aim to keep growing, and the more successful we are, the quicker we grow, the more investment in the local area, the more people we employ. So what I'm trying to say is that the rentals that we receive from this wind farm would be reinvested in our business and therefore reinvested in this area. As the landowners, we're keen that the wind farm has a positive effect on the local people in the local area. It's these people that will live with it on their doorstep, and it's these people that will benefit with a community benefit fund of over £100,000 a year. This will go towards to support local projects, events and good causes. In addition to that, there will be over £300,000 worth of business rates which go towards Dumfries and Galloway Council. I know at a time where cuts have been made left, right and centre, revenue like that would be welcome. 70% of Dumfries and Galloway's land mass is agricultural. It's the main industry in Dumfries and Galloway. I think as an industry and an area, we have a unique opportunity to take advantage of Scotland's drive to be 50% renewable by 2015 and 100% renewable by 2020. 500 letters of objection, that's 0.3% of the population of Dumfries and Galloway. Many of these objectors came from outside the area, one from as far away as America. After spending the morning in the summer knocking on doors in Roan House, apart from a very few vocal objectors, the overriding view I received was that they didn't mind either way. They wouldn't sign letters of objection and they wouldn't sign letters of support as they didn't want to divide the village. Mayfield Wind Farm, I feel, is a good site. It's got good wind speeds and it's got an excellent grid connection at Tungland Power Station. We've had no objections from statutory consultees, including SNH, MOD, Historic Scotland and SEPA. So in summary, I feel the economic benefits of this wind farm through annual community benefit scheme, annual rates to Dumfries and Galloway, rentals to the landowners, and the job creation during and after the project far outweigh any negative impacts this may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Any questions for Mr. Wilson? Councillor Driver.
Mr. Wilson, can you clarify the annual business rates that will be given to Dumfries and Galloway Council?
As far as I know, information I've been given from Community Wind, they'd be better to explain that when Gillian speaks in 2 minutes, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Save that for another day, actually. Thank you, sir. You can take your seat. The next speaker is Mr. Telfer from Kelton Community Council. Mr. Telfer. Mr. Telfer, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Mayfield project lies wholly within Kelton Parish, and as such, Kelton Community Council are deemed to be a statutory consultee. As the chair of the Community Council until October of this year, I and other community councillors were heavily involved in the consultation process for this development, both with the developer Community Wind Power Limited and particularly with parish residents. I've been asked by the current chair of the Community Council, who is also here today, to present this short summary of the Community Council's views. I should say that I have no current involvement with the Community Council. The Community Council ultimately lodged an objection to this proposal in February of this year. Prior to that, we had sought advice from Dumfries and Galloway Governance Section on how best to involve residents in helping us come to a decision, and as a result, the Community Council organised the following activities and made a judgment as a result of them. Firstly, 3 separate public meetings were held in village halls between June 2010 and January 2012. Representatives from Community Wind Power Limited attended all 3 meetings. Secondly, community councillors considered the representations from parish residents to individual members. And thirdly, we convened several public open days in local village halls at which our copy of the proposal was made available for public scrutiny. Parish resident feedback was sought in the form of simple, confidential questionnaires, which, in summary, showed that over 90% of respondents were against the proposal. The most important factors were the perceived negative visual impact and the effect on individual properties, villages and local roads during the construction phase. An adverse impact on tourism, the turbines' proximity to habitations and the precedent that this development would set were secondary concerns. At no stage were community benefits discussed at the public meetings. It was and still is the Community Council's view that this be negotiated at a later point. Within our written objection, we sought clarification on a number of issues which as yet remain unanswered. For example, it has been claimed that 2 full-time jobs will be created. However, it is the Community Council's view that an investment of more than £20 million should be capable of providing more permanent local employment than this. And in this respect, the development is no more of a long-term employer than the current myriad of small enterprises like B&Bs and country pursuits businesses which may be adversely affected if this development goes ahead. We do, however, acknowledge that there would be considerable short-term income generated locally during the construction phase. During the consultation process, parish residents have repeatedly sought assurances that their homes would not be liable to subsidence as a result of increased construction traffic. Some homes in Roan House and Gelston are over 300 years old. It is their view that community wind power has not addressed those concerns adequately, and the Community Council will require written clarification from planners and regional councillors in consultation with the developer as required on how this matter will be addressed, including how a benchmark survey might be carried out to assess pre-construction damage on vulnerable properties in both villages. This all assumes that planning approval will be given. The Community Council believes that renewable energy production, including wind power, has a part to play in the future needs of this country and this parish. Recent planning applications by local farmers to erect turbines of between 20 to 45 metres in height have not been contested by our Community Council, with the general view being that these are fundamentally landowners wishing to reduce their considerable energy bills. Some of those turbines have already been built. However, in respect of the Mayfield proposal, it is of a size and scale completely out of character with the surrounding landscape. It will neither enhance nor conserve that landscape. Many parish residents do not want this development and have individually lodged their objections. We urge planners and councillors to stand up for local residents and the wider community and reject this application. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. Telfer? No. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Telfer. You can take your seat. We now have Gillian Cropper, please. You have 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, members of the council. I'm Gillian Cropper. I'm Senior Project Manager at Community Wind Power Limited. Community Wind Power is a small family-owned company established in 2001, and we have developed 3 operational wind farms, 2 in North Ayrshire and 1 in East Lothian. We pride ourselves on making sure income from our wind farms is spent directly in the local community, with as many local contractors and businesses used as possible. We are different from many different wind farm developers, as we actually own and operate our wind farms for the long term. The construction of this wind farm would bring investment worth £22 million, and we do use Scottish companies such as RJ McLeod, Scottish and Southern Energy, Scottish Power, and Wind Towers Limited of Campbelltown. The long-term annual investment of this project will be over £1 million each and every year, distributed in several ways. Once operational, the 6 turbines will pay business rates of over £300,000 per year. This money will stay with the council. Rent will be paid to local landowners who will invest the money back into the local community. Operational and maintenance payments will be made continually to look after the site, along with electrical and grid connection payments, which will amount to around £500,000 per year. Community benefit payments of around £102,000 would also be paid annually, and that's based on the council's own wind farm community benefit framework based on £5,000 per megawatt. Overall, this amounts to a total capital investment of over £28 million into the local Dumfries and Galloway economy over the next 25 years. Moving on, you will have seen from the planner's report that this application has received no statutory objections from any of the statutory consultees. Those including Scottish Natural Heritage, the Scottish Environment Protection Agency, Historic Scotland, the Ministry of Defence, National Air Traffic Services, Transport Scotland, Scotland Water and the RSPB. They all find this application acceptable. The council's own noise consultant and the Highways Department, along with Galloway's Fisheries Trust, they also find this application acceptable. In particular, S&H have not objected on landscape grounds. If they did have serious concerns over landscape matters, then you would assume that S&H would have lodged a formal objection, but they haven't. Although S&H haven't recommended this, we would consider reducing the tip height of these turbines if the council were to make a positive decision today. However, we believe this site is logical and defensible, but a reduction of tip height would be considered if that was what was requested by the council. I also ask that you take into consideration the significant local support we have for this application, amounting to 288 local people. Whilst we know there are many objections, on closer examination, some of those are from the wider area, some as far away as Somerset, Cheshire, Lancashire, Scottish borders, and as mentioned before, one from America. These are difficult times, and if there was ever a time to invest in our children's futures, then surely now must be the time. We need to support local projects that will stimulate growth in the local economy and provide real, valuable financial benefits to the construction industry and local businesses. This application will provide that boost for the next 25 years, along with educational and environmental gains for local communities. 2 permanent full-time positions would be created through the operation of the wind farm, as they will be required to service and maintain the wind farm and the turbines. Mayfield is a small wind farm with only 6 turbines. However, it will generate a substantial amount of electricity, over 20 megawatts, which is enough to power over 11,500 local homes. This shovel-ready project can be deployed promptly and rapidly and could be generating green electricity by 2014. This planning application is only temporary for no more than 25 years. The grounds for refusal noted in the report are solely connected to landscape and visual
30
impacts.
seconds.
But these would only be temporary. After 25 years, the turbines would be removed and the site returned to its original condition. Please consider this not from your own point of view, but also from those of your children and their children's point of views. An informed and balanced decision is required today, and I urge you to please approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Cropper. Councillor Driver.
Thank you. Can you clarify the question I asked the previous supporter with regards to business rate of £300,000 to Dumfries and Galloway, where that's actually coming from?
From our calculations, based on £30,000 per megawatt, it's coming in at obviously about £320,000 per year. It's rates that are paid to the council.
It's not a material planning consideration, actually, but I know where you're coming from. Any other questions? Councillor Maitland.
Ms Cropper, a couple of the representatives talked about infrasound, and I wondered if you had any comments to make about sound issues at all, to allay people's concerns. I mean, I've read the reports by Dr. Salt, and I think probably there is an issue emerging. Have you taken any account of any emerging research being done into this particular issue with respect to buildings which are nearer than 1.5 kilometres?
Thank you for your question. Obviously, I'm not a noise expert myself. Obviously, we use the experts of a fully qualified noise consultant to do the survey work. In relation to infrasound, obviously the reports that I've read have always sort of come to the conclusion that there's no major impacts or anything like that. However, I can confirm that in relation to noise in general, obviously our wind farm and the turbines do comply with the 35 decibel limit, or background plus 5 decibels. I haven't seen any of those recent reports myself, but if that's something that's required, then obviously our noise experts would review those and comment accordingly. But from the reports I've always seen, infrasound is not deemed to be an unacceptable issue.
Councillor McComb.
Thanks, Chair. Ms Cropper, could you indicate how many tonnes of concrete and steel will go into the foundations for the turbine?
Good question. I can't remember the actual figure off the top of my head. I think it's in the region of 350 metres cubed of concrete per turbine base.
350 cubic metres. Right. How much of that will be removed at decommissioning?
At decommissioning, not all of the concrete is removed. Normally the top half of the foundation, which is roughly 3 metres deep and roughly about 1 metre, 1.5 metres of the top is taken away. and the remainder is left in the ground. That's sort of standard decommissioning practice, but obviously in 25 years' time it could be a very different scenario and it could all be removed. I can't say I don't know what happens in 25 years' time.
Thank you. No further questions. Councillor Dryburgh.
Yeah, a couple of the objectors mentioned about the jobs with regards previous applications, one being for 7 turbines, which would have gave 50 jobs. This one's got 6 turbines, 100 jobs. Can you explain the sort of difference? Yeah.
Yeah, basically, I can understand the confusion over that point. What we're saying is we're sort of supporting 100 jobs during the construction phase. We're not actually obviously creating brand new ones, but we're supporting jobs. Obviously, the companies may, as part of that, take people on if they can't meet the work with their current workforce. Basically, what's happened since the original application to the second application, there's more information available out there, so we're able to actually, and we've developed more wind farms ourselves, we have a better understanding on the construction process and the actual number of people involved, so hence estimates on jobs supported are now more accurate, and it is based on 100 people.
Okay, no more questions. Councillor Geddes? No. Thank you, madam. You can take your seat. You're now in session, gentlemen. Councillor Geddes.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, Chairman, the matter's on short compass. I think the case officer's report sets out clearly and succinctly the reasons as to why this application should be refused, and I have no compunction in moving that we adopt these recommendations and refuse the application as a consequence.
Councillor McKee.
Aye, thanks, Chair. There was some very interesting speakers here today, and they've raised some interesting issues. And the biggest one, as far as I'm concerned, is the noise issue and the distance from the turbines. Now, environmental standards officer, what sort of distances does he work to? And does he cover the longer distance that Mrs. Repton, she's about a mile away from the turbine and she gets constant noise. Have our environmental standards officers measured noise at that sort of distance? And maybe even further, I don't know.
We happen to have a spare one here. Would you like to answer those points, sir? Just come to Dean's microphone here. Come forward one, because that will not work.
Again, my name's Will Jackson. I work as Environmental Standards or Environmental Health Officer. Within any noise assessment with any wind farm application, the noise is duly considered. We use a bit of guidance called ETCR 97, which is government recognised guidance for assessing acceptable limits to wind farms. Within any noise assessment, there is a protocol for the distance away, but with respect to Mrs. Repton, if she has a noise complaint with respect to an operational wind farm, there is a procedure that needs to be followed with respect to the investigation of that complaint. But within any property, within really any distance, reasonable noise is taken into consideration. There is noise modelling, which is carried out with noise is essentially energy. It propagates to a set distance according geometric divergence within the atmosphere. So essentially, it works to a certain limit, and if the noise is significantly low, at say perhaps 15 miles from a development, it wouldn't be worth considering. Whereas obviously we work to a lower limit within ETSO of 35 dB, and as a result, anything below that would be below that which would be nationally acceptable.
You want to come back, Councillor McKee?
If you don't mind. There was another lady, Mrs. Lee, raised the noise levels were set a way back some time ago and it's never been reviewed. Is there a need for that to be done, do you think? And regarding infrasound and amplitude modulation, whatever these sorts of things are, but there's an issue with noise, maybe a noise or a vibration that's there that can't necessarily be heard, but can be having an effect on you. Is that the case, or is it a load of rubbish?
Thank you, Councillor McKee. The document that we use is, again, it's SCR 1997. It was made by a collective group of experts at the time, and they represented the best of the best within both within the industry and within government. The whole purpose for the document is within the first page of ETSU. It's meant to be a reasonable guide. It's not meant to be overly administrative on wind farm developers, and it was designed to provide a reasonable level of protection to wind farm neighbours, whilst allowing the economic benefits of wind farms to go ahead. That was in 1996. The guidance that we used, the legislation that I personally used for nuisance is the Environmental Protection Act 1990. Of course, all things are subject to review, but at the moment, the Scottish Government haven't reviewed SCR 1997. If they do, then obviously that would be applied to all future developments, and we as a department can only use recognised development or recognised procedure. If we derived away from ETSU, then ourselves as a department and ourselves representing the council, I feel, would be open to scrutiny. With respect to infrasound, I'm aware there's a lot of concern from members of the public with respect to infrasound and sound in general. Infrasound is Greek for below sound. The human ear hears frequencies at different levels, and typically from birth we hear between 20 and 20,000 hertz. As we get older, we hear less at the higher end due to the damage of the hairs within our ear that hear the sound. Sound is energy. Radiation is energy. Sunlight is energy. The sound is simply energy that our ear and our eardrum vibrates, and our auditory nerve determines it as sound. That's the old adage that what's sound to one is an awful din to another. There is an awful lot of research with respect to infrasound, but as I say, everybody hears frequencies of different weighting, and within noise there are different weightings that are associated with response to the human ear. The one typically was dBA, which basically you hear lower frequencies less well than the higher frequencies. Conversely, for infrasound, the magnitude of the wave needs to be significantly high for it to be audible. And the current guidance that we have with respect to infrasound is that modern turbines, with respect to the reports, obviously there are always new reports coming through, and we welcome any new evidence which is obviously corroborated and properly vetted. But modern turbines are shown as not to be a significant contributor to infrasound. Now, one of the objectors had regard to infrasound, obviously, that cannot be heard, but that perhaps they may have an effect on the body. I can't answer that. It's currently an area of research, and it's not something which I can adversely comment on, because everybody's body resonates at a certain frequency. If one person may be more susceptible to another, the ETSU guidance is designed to protect the majority of the people living in the area and not those that are overly sensitive. The reports which are carried out may change that opinion, but at the moment, based on the reports that we have, infrasound isn't an issue. Amplitude modulation, there are conditions that have been tried to be placed by local authorities down in England. It was subject to a rather large and lengthy planning appeal with respect to the application of the amplitude modulation conditions. That is something that there still is an awful lot of work on. The conditions were subsequently removed as part of that condition. But there are a lot of people doing a lot of research in that area. And perhaps a suspensive condition on planning development, as we have with respect to noise conditions, would be appropriate.
Thanks for that. Hope Mrs. Ripton picks up on what was said earlier on.
Right.
I'm quite happy to support Councillor Geddison's motion.
Okay. Councillor McComb.
Thank you, Chair. Several of the speakers have drawn attention to the matter of scale, and that is something which concerns me greatly. You have here 6 turbines on a shelf of ground between 100 and 130 metres high. The highest peaks are just over 170 metres. These turbines are going to be some 65, 66 metres above the highest heights of the peaks. At a height of 80 metres, you're going to have the rotating blades circumscribing an area larger than a football field. It is totally out of scale with the landscape. I would be very happy to support Councillor Geddes.
Councillor Thompson.
My intention was also to support Councillor Geddes. I've no doubt that these very large turbines would totally dominate the landscape around that area, and I think the recommendations to refuse on the grounds are adequate.
Councillor Maitland.
It's all about policy. It's all here. It's completely clear. I don't think there is any doubt that our policies protect the landscape from this particular type of inappropriate development. It's not appropriate here, and I'm absolutely delighted to support my fellow members.
Anyone otherwise minded? No? Do you wish to speak, Councillor Dryburgh?
Happy to support, Chair. You know my view on base load.
Yes, sir. We've heard it before. I think we've got a unanimous decision. Okay. Claire?
Chairman, your members have agreed to refuse the application at item number 4 on the grounds set out in the report at paragraph 5.1.
Okay. Do you wish to break for lunch, or can we do another one before lunch?
I think, sir, standing the vote, that some of us would want to see lunch postponed as long as possible in these circumstances. I would proceed. I would suggest,
right,
with your agreement, sir, we proceed.
Okay.
Chairman, before we proceed, Linda, could you get Councillor Gilroy back in, please?
Okay, we can't find Councillor Gilroy, so we'll just have to proceed without her. Sorry? Well, maybe, yes. Item 5, erection of 45 dwelling houses, formation of access roads and parking areas, children's play areas, suds detention basin and landscaping works at plots 1 to 45, phase 3, Barnhill. Local plan site LN10B on land adjacent to Oakfield, Glencairn, Woodside, Terregles Road, Dumfries. Claire Eckstein, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just an update for paragraph 2.7 in your report. Just an update for paragraph 2.7 of the report for the archaeologist's response. I've spoken with the council archaeologists and they have confirmed that they visited the site with the archaeologists who were preparing the evaluation report, and they confirmed that there's no archaeological impediment to the development of the site and confirmed that they have no conditions to add. So the proposal is for the erection of 45 dwelling houses. This is an aerial photograph of the site, which lies on the western edge of Dumfries, adjacent to the Barnhill estate. And this shows the application site with the access taken off Tipperwappy Drive. This is the plan, shows the layout for the 45 dwelling houses based on a circular road layout with that access taken off Tipperwappy Drive and the emergency vehicle access off Terregles Road in the southwest corner of the site. These show the proposed house types, which are a mixture of 3 to 5 bedroom houses. And these houses will be a mixture of brick and render, which will be similar to that used on the Barnhill estate. So this shows the houses on Tipperwappy Drive with the access road noted between numbers 16 and 17. This is in between the access between the houses, which were secured by the planning condition 8 in 05P 30379, which was the Barnhill estate development. This is taken from the northeast corner of the site, looking along the rear of the properties along Tipperwappy Drive and panning right to the trees in the centre, which are on the western boundary, and then turning right round to the hedge, which marks the northern boundary of the site. And this is a view along the southern boundary, looking to the rear of the properties, which front onto Terregles Road. The shed, which you can see in just to the centre left, belongs to Woodside, and then the properties, the houses you can see are Glencairn, Blytheswood, and Oakfield, which are accessed off Terregles Road. And this is that's from that same camera position, just panning right again, and the houses you can see are the rear of Tipperwappy Drive. Going out with the site onto Terregles Road, this is looking towards Dumfries with Oakfield to the left-hand side of the photograph. And then turning round again, looking in the other direction, and this looks towards the southwest corner of the site, and the access, the emergency vehicle access will be taken by the existing field access. And then I'm actually going within the site itself, looking right across the site. So on the left-hand side, you've got the western hedge boundary, and then panning right round, or all the way round to the extreme right would be where the emergency vehicle access would be taken on Terregles Road. So as the report sets out, this site falls within the settlement boundary of Dumfries and is on an allocated housing land site with the access from an existing residential estate and with a new EVA, emergency vehicle access, off Terregles Road. The proposal is considered to be acceptable and to accord with the planning policies, and the recommendation is to approve subject to conditions noted in the report and to the signing of planning obligations in respect of affordable housing and the maintenance of the sustainable drainage scheme and to landscaping.
Thank you, Claire. Any questions for Claire at this stage? Councillor Dryborough.
Thanks, Claire. Can you go back a couple of photographs to the where you saw the left-hand side was Tupper Drive, and you saw the hedge on the right-hand side? I think it was the one before that one. Yeah, seems to be a lot of water in that area. I'm just want to be certain that we've got enough to cover that with the suds and things like that are actually involved in the report. Would that be sorted?
Yes, the hedge just behind the hedge is an actual existing sort of watercourse, and the suds basin, as you can see on your, if I just go back to the previous one, the layout, there we are. So the watercourse that you can see behind on the northern boundary, behind that hedge, and the suds basin is in that sort of northwest corner. Go back to and they're going to connect into that, the suds basin, and then will eventually connect into that, well, it's a ditch watercourse. And then, but the site has just recently had the archaeological evaluation carried out. There are quite a few trenches sort of across the site, and that's why some of the ground looks sort of cleared, because there was, works for that evaluation being carried out.
Any other questions for Claire? No? We have one speaker on this, Mr. McNeill. Mr. McNeill, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I'm actually speaking on behalf of the residents of the entire Phase 2 for there. Instead of this written out, I'll start briefly on the drainage. There is significant drainage problems in the existing site with the sud basins. The suds have not been adopted by Scottish Water as they do not conform to the required standard. And that currently leaves us in a position where nobody's willing to take responsibility for them. The water flows from the 3 suds into the one which is on the application site, and all the overflow water flows into the little burn. The Dumfries bypass at the Castle Douglas Road roundabout, there's a burn that runs under there that floods on a regular basis, flooding the fields. All our surface water is heading down to there. Now, there is a thing where you must accept the natural drainage from the higher tenant. However, this is man-made drainage being put into a watercourse that can clearly not cope. All the houses in Tipperley Drive, Colston Road, Colston Street, Tipperley Court have gardens that cannot be used because there is no drainage. And the houses that they propose to put in that section there will again suffer the problems that there is no drainage. We were all told when we moved in and bought houses here that this was the end of the development, hence the reason Hillview Meadows. If this development gets the go-ahead, then we all lose our views and the reason why we moved into the area. Vehicle access through the existing site, the road is very twisty and narrow, and in Phase 1 and the early start of Phase 2, there's only 1 parking space in front of each house. Most houses around there now have 2 or 3 cars per household, which means at least 1 or 2 cars are parked on the street, on the pavements, on corners. There's a lot of houses which are rented out with works vans. One house now has 4 works vans at it. The bus gets blocked on a regular basis. And last night, after speaking to a couple of people regarding this, I sat for 5 minutes in a queue of 6 motors as we couldn't get through ourselves back to the house. Emergency vehicle access, I see they now have put that on. However, speaking from experience, I very much doubt that will be used. Emergency vehicles will continue to use the main route in. Considering the proximity of the new hospital, proposed hospital, the access needs to be taken into consideration. I understand, although the development is in excess of 10 years old, the council still do not have adopted the streets. I believe there is an issue with the street lighting that does not conform to the requirement, and I believe these need to be addressed. The local Nistale plan allocates 20 units to the site. The initial plan went in, was actually incorrect and not picked up by anybody in the planning office. It had 48 houses and not the 45. Persimmons have been advertising the site, offering to take the deposits on the plots.
Can you wind up now, please, sir?
Yep, final thing, even emailed one of our residents yesterday to confirm the development was going to go ahead, and I do have a copy of that email. Just briefly, I do have a petition that's been signed by all the residents in the neighbouring streets, quite a substantial petition that is objecting to this development. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. McNeill? Councillor Thompson.
Mr. McNeill, you actually referred to the existing suds arrangement not being adopted by Scottish Water. Care to enlarge on that?
Certainly. The suds have not been built to the required standard, and therefore Scottish Water have refused to adopt them. I understand some local councillors, and including Russell Brown MP, have been involved with trying to get this sorted out, and it has still not been addressed, to the point now where all the pipes leading into the suds are blocked. We cannot get anybody to maintain them. The factoring company are refusing to work on it. Persimmons are refusing to do anything, and there's so many issues with regards to drainage that the water is meant to soak away in there. We understand that they collect water. The deepest we've had them is 2 feet, and that's a vast amount of water in an unprotected area. But the majority of that water is flowing into the Little Burn, which is causing flooding further downstream, and that's the law states that you must accept natural drainage from a higher tenant. This is man-made drainage being put into a water course that cannot cope with it.
Okay, thank you for that.
Any other questions for Mr. McNeill? No? Thank you, sir. You can take your seat. We're in session. Councillor McKee.
Chair, I'm just wondering if, based on what Mr. McNeill said and being involved in this as well, and your Councillor Roy, telling those fields, then the bypass, road, like Quail Off, the last 2 or 3 weeks, and what the gentleman's saying is quite correct. Could we defer consideration of this application until such times as you have discussions with the developer and get this suds sorted out, see why Scottish Water won't accept it, and all the different issues associated with the suds? Would that be an appropriate way forward?
Councillor, the first thing to recognise is that most of the issues in relation to the existing problem, you have to consider whether or not they are going to have an impact on whether or not you can assess this application, because the difficulties which were being raised are about an existing situation. So in relation to this application, do they prevent you deciding this case? Have you got sufficient information to decide this case on the basis of the merits of this application? That's a central theme, because you've got an application before you. Do you have the information sufficiently to address it? Because what is being raised is actually not relevant necessarily to this application.
You're too technical for me. Then I want to get into an argument with you. But given that this suds system is going to link into the existing one, is my understanding, if the existing one's not working properly, why put a new one in or another one into it? So based on that, I would suggest that we defer consideration of this application until such time as that can be resolved. Because I know it's been going on for a few years, as Mr. McNeill says, and that's no according to this application. But this application is just going to add to the problems, I would suggest, by using the same suds system.
Thank you. I would draw your attention to page 84 and paragraph 4.18. The suds for this site connects to the same watercourse as the existing Barnhill estate site, but at a separate location, and therefore can be considered as a separate system. So that bit there is a relevant aspect that you should consider.
With all due respect, they can join where they like, It's the end result down at the Castle Douglas Road where it almost constantly floods. The slightest bit of heavy rain, and that'll be flooded on Saturday probably because it's going to rain on Friday. So if this burn is adding to the flooding situation, and that the burn will come for about Terregles as well, likely. But you're just adding to it, and we need to look at ensure that what's there, why has it not been adopted, and get that sorted out before we add to it. Because there's no good us saying, right, we'll adopt, we'll put in the suds system, it'll connect with what's there, if what's there's not working. We're just adding to the problem, I would suggest.
I think really just to reiterate what Janice was saying there, you've got to actually look at there's an existing situation. Yes, you and I and a number of others have met up on site in the past and looking on that one. You cannot use this application as leverage to try and resolve an existing problem. This has got to be looked at in isolation, and the advice that you're getting here is that it is acceptable on its own merits. So basically, if this application is considered on its own merits to be okay, you couldn't reasonably defer it until another separate issue is resolved, because that I would have to say would really be taking the planning application really should be determined on its own merits, not on the basis of another existing situation.
Councillor Dryburgh.
Thank you. And every planning application should be considered on its own merits. But I do have a couple of concerns about this. That when I saw that particular picture, I had some concerns. I don't know the site, right? So I would like to ask for a deferral until we have a site visit. I think it would be easier for us to see where the complications are. It also mentions in the consultation that Terregles water treatment works has limited capacity, but that's also been recently through a planning application in which it was accepted. So is that going to help the situation, or is it going to hinder the situation? I'm just wondering if perhaps on the site visit a member for Scottish Water can come along and give us their understanding of what would actually happen.
Yes, well, certainly the committee clearly has power to request that it be visited. We could request that somebody from Scottish Water come along, but we obviously can't make them come along. But we can certainly request for you.
Councillor Geddes.
Well, I've no problems, Chairman, in supporting Councillor Dry. I call him Archie, I always get mixed. Dryburgh, forgive me, Archie. That on the basis that we have the site visit, I take the point, and I agree with the point that Mrs. Kay has made in referring us to earlier in the report. You can't do that, in my opinion, sir. But we can legitimately, we have concerns, we can legitimately defer consideration of this application today and undertake a site visit on the back of asking for representation from Scottish Water, and I'm more than happy to support that motion, sir.
Councillor Maitland.
I wanted to ask about the street lighting, which has obviously been raised as an issue, and we heard that we add incrementally 1.5% of street lightings per year. If you remember rightly, at Policy and Resources, we were told that year by year we add to the burdens 1.5% of street lights, and I would like to make certain that whatever we put in here minimises that burden. Obviously it must comply with the rules, but I think we should be actually breaking along as to putting a brake on the numbers of streetlights we put in and minimising the effect. That's the first thing. And the second thing is it is my usual rant about design. I see that this is from the applicant's Scottish town range. And I would say to members, if you look at that, I mean, what does that say about Dumfries? Could be absolutely anywhere. I mean, absolutely anywhere. It doesn't say, well, you know, this is what I'm really getting at. I mean, you know, I'm told here in the design statement that they arrived at this design through an extensive design process. Well, I would actually ask you what extensive design process has gone along in selecting, we'll have 2 Leiths and 1 Newton, oh, and a Lismore, because that's very Scottish, and a Warriston. you know, I really have to say to us that we are not doing our physical planning any favours at all by accepting just willy-nilly this sort of, I think, non-specific to our area type of design. And it just goes on. And unless we actually
Are you agreeing to
challenge
site
it-
visit, Mrs Maitland?
Well, no, not really. I mean, I'm challenging people really to say, come on, up your game, because...
Chairman, point of order with respect. There's been a procedural motion put.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone? Councillor Gilroy?
It's actually to do with the site visit, because I was quite anxious and I wonder if you could show us the access that was going between two houses, and in the report that it seems that we're trying to fit something into an area. If you look at...
Sorry, we've had a motion for a site visit.
Yeah.
Seconded.
Yeah, that's right. Actually, access to the site is something else that I'd like to look at as well in the site visit.
Can we have that slide up, please, Claire?
Look. Yeah, but you showed that one.
Aye. You could deal with access off the Terregles Road, actually.
Is that would be the access between those two houses? Is that what you're telling us?
Yes, that's the access. But if you look at the layout plan, you can see that's already been secured by condition. The photograph itself might be because there's a merged photograph. It's just distorted on the image.
It looked as if it was in a corner. Take a bully run at it. And
So you can see
through.
that it's a normal width
Right.
of the road between.
We've had a request for a site visit. Is there an amendment to that? Okay. Claire?
Chairman, you've agreed to, defer item 5 on the agenda for a site visit with a request for representation from Scottish Water at the visit.
Chairman, can I ask the mover of the motion, perhaps standing what Councillor Gilroy has said, and I think we all agreed with that, we might be looking at, for someone from the roads department there as well, in relation to the proposed access routes, etc.
Okay. Got that clear? Thank you very much. I think we'll break for lunch at this point. It is 1:45 or very near it, somewhere in that region. No, we'll not be back at 2. We'll be back. I said we would take this item 3, immediately after lunch, giving over 2 hours for our comrade to meet with us. I propose to take item 3 at this stage because we have given him enough time. So, item 3 was the demolition of disused dwelling house, associated outbuildings and part of boundary wall at Ann House, Bellevilla Road, Stranraer. Robert, are you taking this one?
Thank you, Chair. As members will note from the agenda, members are already in session regarding this application. It's continued application. Turning to the actual report, the report is the same as has been considered previously, with changes at 1.1, which gives you the present position, 1.8, 1.9 and 4.16. The only other thing I would point out is that the applicant's agent was in contact with me 2 days ago asking clarification of procedure because the applicant at that stage, as I understood it, wished to speak. I sought clarification on that from a governance perspective yesterday, but I didn't actually get any, so I couldn't report back to the applicant's agent. So it might be worthwhile just outlining procedure to begin with, if that's okay.
Yes, I mean, you are in session as a committee. You heard all the representations at the first meeting. You resolved to go for a site visit, which you undertook. It came back to a meeting in August, where you continued in session and resolved that you wanted to allow a 3-month period to see if there was any interest coming forward on the building. So you've continued in session, were you to wish to hear further representations, you'd need to defer it to a future meeting, open it up and send out invitations to all the parties who were interested in this one before, and allow them all to make representations in the interest of natural justice. So unfortunately today you can't just pick and choose who you want to hear, but there is that facility if you feel it's necessary to allow further representations to be made. But basically you are in session, so the first thing to decide is whether you wish to do anything else other than determine the application today.
Members? Councillor Gilroy.
Can I just ask, is it the people that were there at the in August, whenever we decided at the 29th, are they the only ones that can take part in this then? And have we got
it's
the right
who can actually vote if it came to a vote? Councillor Gilroy, can I just clarify who that is at this stage? It's yourself, Chairman, Councillors Dryborough, Geddes, Gilroy, McComb, McKee, Maitland and Thompson. Councillors Yen and McCotry would also have been eligible to vote if they had been present.
Okay, that clarified? No. Members were in session. Anybody got anything they wish to say? Councillor Driver.
Chair, at the last meeting, I think there was a motion, an amendment and a counter amendment to do this type of thing. Looking at this further report, I think there are new issues that have been brought forward here. And that raises some concerns as to, I mean, I put the counter amendment in, and it probably wouldn't have been a counter amendment if I knew then what I knew now after reading the report. So I'm just wondering for clarity and insurance that all members understand the whole issue with regarding this plan application, that we should bring it back to a future plan application committee and give representatives the opportunity to put their case forward again.
Is that a motion, actually? Alistair.
Thanks very much, Chairman. I'm sure it's anathema to most of us, as it were, to continue stuff and continue it. But I mean, I'm basically in support of what Archie's saying, because if in fact there are new issues or purported new issues, Chairman, I personally would like to hear these. But having made the point, sir, I accept Mr. Sutty's comments entirely. In the interest of natural justice, you cannot pick and choose, and at the end of the day, if we want to hear, as it were, the further submissions, we've obviously got to give the representatives, objectors, call them what you will, similar opportunity. So if Archie's moving that we do that to the next meeting or to an early meeting of this committee with a view to being in the position, Chairman, where we can in fact finally determine the application and dispose of it, I'd be prepared to second them.
Anyone otherwise? Councillor McKee.
No, I'm no otherwise minded, Chair, but I'm looking at the 2.2 item B for the Council Conservation Officer, where they're on about considering a repairs notice being served for the ingress of water to make the place wind and watertight. Now, the longer we defer this, the worse it's going to become. Are we in a situation where we could institute a repairs notice, but until the next time this can be raised, get the repairs notice undertaken in that time? But there again, the owner may say, well, I want to knock the damn thing down. If you've got to give permission to do it, it's a waste of money to repair it. But if we want to keep it up, that damage is being made worse.
Mr. Duncan.
Thank you, Chair. If I could clarify the chronology of events, if you like. The Council Conservation Officer comments predate the member's site visit, which was held on the 8th of August this year, and at that point in time it was clarified that the building at that stage was wind and watertight, and I've got no reason to believe that is not the case now, so some remedial work was done in advance of the member's site visit after the Conservation Area Officer's comments. I mean, officers can certainly go and have a look at it again, and if we feel there's a need for the repairs notice, that's obviously independent of your determination on the application. But, as far as we were aware, the building was now wind and watertight.
Sorry, Chair, that's fine. It's just that I took this to mean that there's urgent repairs needing done. But if you're happy that it's wind and watertight, I'm quite happy to go with that.
Councillor Geddes. We have a motion for it to defer this for further consultation or whatever. Councillor Galloway, no. Maitland.
Well, it was just. Would we normally do this? String something along, waiting for people to come up with more information and more information? I mean, I'm just wanting to know whether this is a sort of normal process, at which point, we could come along and it still hang around. We still need more information. In 2 months' time, this has been strung out and strung out and strung out, and I'm quite surprised that we would want to do this anymore.
I think the proposal was to deal with it, to deal with information that's new in this report. Is that correct? Councillor Geddes, maybe you wanted to.
That was the basis on which I seconded Councillor Driver's comments. And if the applicant's agent feels that there are genuine, valid reasons, as to why he should be allowed to introduce new information, I personally would prefer to err on the side of caution and hear that. I mean, Councillor Maitland's quite right. We wouldn't normally do that, but if there are genuine, reasons, my view is that we should err on the side of caution, do it, make it clear that the other parties, are given the opportunity to do that. You bring it back here as soon as possible, sir, and you thereupon determine it. As I've said, I think it's anathema to most of us to string stuff out like this.
Councillor Driver.
Totally agree with that, Chair. The other thing is that in the interest of natural justice, of course, is we have to hear from those representatives who may have applied to buy the accommodation and that type of thing. This is new information. It's in here, as Robert had actually said, because of the planning officer's investigations, and I just want to hear other people.
Any Councillor Gilroy?
Yeah, but I kind of think we kind of expected to get new information if there was going to be any at this meeting. So I don't know why we didn't organise so that we could actually start again, if you like, and hear all we needed to hear today, because I don't think it's a good way of doing business to just keep things ticking over because somebody thinks, oh, and I would assume if we defer it now, which I don't really actually have a problem with, but the next time, if something else crops up that we don't understand, or we need another site visit, or when do we actually say that we have to make a decision? Because it's really not good practice to go on and on and on.
Chair, yes, totally agree that you don't want to string this out any longer. The technical difficulty is that you are still in session. It is not open to officers to take you out of that session and suddenly allow more representations. We had to have that meeting today to establish if you wish to do that, or if you decided that on the basis of the information you had, you got sufficient information to determine it. I can guarantee we'll put this on the first agenda, which I think is the 30th of January for next year. So it will be brought back to the very first meeting we possibly can. And I would hope at that meeting, given that you're going to be hearing the most up-to-date information from all the relevant parties, you would be in a position to make a decision on the 30th of January.
Thank you, Chair. Just a point of clarification. Is the property currently on the market?
It's in the report. My understanding was at the time the report was written by the case officer, it was understood that the property was not on the market. It's at 1.9. It says, furthermore, the selling agent was able to confirm that the property had been withdrawn from the market at around the end of August 2012. It would really need to be a question to the landowners as to whether it was now on the market, but that was certainly the case when the report was written by the case officer.
Councillor Geddes, did you want?
Just to say, sir, that 30th of January it's about 6 weeks away. Is there no way that we can sort of look at the possibility of a special meeting of this committee on a one-item agenda to get this matter resolved? And surely we could piggyback it onto another meeting or meetings, when we're in Dumfries anyway. I would like, if at all possible, Chairman, to see it determined before. And I accept entirely what's been said. My view is that this is the last such postponement, for want of a better term. We get the information that's been alluded to today, and all other information in the back of that, well, it's too late. You make your submissions for the next meeting, and you have it before the 30th of January, if at all possible. A special meeting of this committee, sir, single item agenda, and have it, as I say, on another meeting date.
Councillor Drybury, did you want in?
There are obviously some logistical issues in terms of a run-in. We have to have reports and letters sent out ready about 10 days before a meeting. Given the Christmas close down, I would be surprised if we can get it much earlier than the scheduled meeting, but we would need to speak to government and see what the availability is. But if you leave that with us, we'll see what we can do for you.
Okay, agreed. You're shaking your head, Mrs. Maitland. Muttering under your breath. It's not becoming of you. It's not like you either. Councillor Gilroy.
Of clarity, would that mean that next meeting would be everybody could start from scratch again? So we're not in session, it's not the people that have voted, it's a brand new application, so to speak. Is that what's happening? Yeah? Because if everybody can start speaking, then I would assume that everybody on the planning committee can take part, that's all. Just like to know.
I would suggest that really you have got to the stage where there are a certain number of members who have been party to information all the way along, where you've gone on the visit, you've been involved in the discussions, you've heard the earlier representations. I would strongly suggest that the list that Claire read out are really you're bringing it out of session for those members alone to really hear. That's how I would interpret that, but...
We'll take governance advice and make sure we get it right. Did you wish to say something, Councillor McCall?
Chairman, sorry for being a wee bit late, stuck at Chambly. I'm happy if it's been continued, and I think it should be those who at least took part in the first two meetings, and those of us who bothered to go on the site visit and actually seen it in the flesh. Because I think if you allowed the whole committee, then the move might be to go and have a site visit again. And some of us took the time to go on the site visit, so I'm happy. Keep it to those of us who were actually there.
Chairman, I would concur with the planning officer's views on this. However, I will make sure I seek additional advice from the Director Chief Executive Service on this one.
With your leave, sir, I would have to say with respect, I'm of the opposite view. I mean, I would like Councillor Gilroy, I mean, if we're starting this de novo, a fresh colour, what you will, whatever terminology you want to employ, I think we should be inclusive and we should endeavour to have all the members of this committee, you know, here with the report, which allows us to determine it on the day, as it were, and deal with it on that basis, rather than to quote the late, some of us would have said, great Bert Sanders, you know, operating on the basis of a magic circle, with only those and such as those. And if we could do that, sir, I would ask that be considered.
Councillor Maitland.
Right, you've gone on long enough. I'm going to push it. I'm going to say we should determine this now. I hope I have a seconder. Thank you. My dissent will be then recorded. Thank you.
Chairman, you've agreed to defer this application to an early as possible meeting of the committee, certainly before the 30th of January scheduled one, to hear further representations on the new issues raised in the report and to seek clarification on who is eligible to participate and vote on that item.
Okay, right. Next item 6, is an erection of 4 dwelling houses, construction of access road and bridge, and installation of sewage treatment plant at Clachan of Girton, Gatehouse of Fleet, Castle Douglas. Judith.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, this is an application for the erection of 4 dwelling houses at Clachan of Girton near Gatehouse of Fleet. The application site is in the centre of the image. It's adjacent to the C9, which is the road that connects the A75 to Sandgreen. The small building group of Girton is clustered round about the crossroads there just to the north of the application site. There's a track to the north of the site that leads up to Barnhill Lodge, and there's a listed building, the Old Kirk, to the south of the image. Moving on to the site layout, the 4 houses are arranged with there's rear elevations to the track. The land runs down the hill from plot 4 down to plot 1. There's a burn that runs across the site. One mature tree would be required to be felled to accommodate the development. The access road would be taken from the C9. There's no proposal to use the existing access road, which has a small bridge, and there have been concerns raised about that. So there's a new access road with swales that would deal with any flooding issues. There would be dikes, excuse me, new dikes either side of the access road up to the new bridge. Moving on to the dwelling houses themselves, there are 2 larger ones, plot 1 and plot 4. Plot 4 is just plot 1 transferred around the other way. These are 4-bedroom, but 2 of the bedrooms are contained in the roof space. They're contemporary design, and with two main elements connected with a glazed unit. The main part of the dwellings would be finished in self-coloured render, and in this instance, the garage and the utility rooms behind would be, the external walls would be clad in timber. It would be untreated timber cladding, and the roofs would be slate and standing seam zinc roofing. This is the elevations to go back, the southwest elevation, which is the one, if I can manage this one here, is the front elevation of the dwelling. Moving on to the plots 2 and 3, they're just really single units with a porch. Moving on to the images, the application site is not in this image, but this is just to show you the approach. As you come off the A75, the road's very straight, and this is a corner, and it's actually quite a bad corner. And there's a dwelling house, small cottage, just on the inside of the corner on the right-hand side. And that's Kirk House, which is in front of the old listed church, ruined kirk, on the top of the hill. This has gone along past the bad corner onto the straight, and this is looking back towards the site. So the new houses would be arranged in the front of the 2 cottages that are shown there. And this is panning round to the right-hand side, back towards the cottage that's on the bad corner along, and that gives you a view along the C9. This is about where the access would be taken into the site. This is a view down over the site. It doesn't really look like it's looking down, but the ground slopes down towards the barn and the road, which is where the trees are along the centre of the image. And the listed church, Kirk behind, and Kirk House are on the hill. I would point out that there have been representations that mention the National Trust Agreement, which covers the land in the application site. This is covered in paragraph 4.12 of the report. This is a civil matter, and should planning permission be granted for this development, the applicant would need to seek permission from the National Trust as a separate matter. And to conclude, for the reasons as detailed in the report, the application is recommended for approval, subject to conditions.
Thank you. Any questions for the officer? Councillor McKee, and then.
Thanks. Could you take us back to the map of the site, please, Judith? Is that Bendy Road? Is that a new road you're wanting to put in there? Between plots 1 and 2?
Yes, that's the access road that would go in here. This is an existing road down here, an existing track, and this is the main road.
Is that just a track that goes up the other side of the red line?
Yes, it gives access to the rear of the houses and their parking areas.
Is there any reason why that couldn't be used for access? I'm just wondering what's the need for this this new road?
It's a visibility. This is a very, very bad corner. This is an extremely bad corner, and it's for visibility.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Geddes.
Yes, sir. It's the issue of the covenant, for want of a better term, with the National Trust. I've heard over the years, and I've ranted over the years about the fact that part of the failure of the planning system, to my mind, is its propensity to run in separate tracks from common sense and reality. Now, let's say, for argument's sake, that we grant this application today, and the applicant goes along to the National Trust.
Alistair, have you got a question for the officer?
Yes.
Aye, that's fine.
Why? It was my comment about planning systems, maybe sort of striking a nerve somewhere. Because I'm unrepentant, Chairman, as well you would expect me to be. But as I say, at the end of the day, let's say that we grant this application, we're to grant this application today, and the applicant goes and endeavours to negotiate, as it were, the removal of the covenant with the National Trust. He's not successful in that. Does that then thereupon preclude another applicant coming forward, as it were, with another application in relation to sites elsewhere in this small group? Because the chances are he'll be told, well, there already is an extant planning permission, even although, Chairman, that in realistic terms it would never be implemented because the National Trust would never agree to the removal of the covenant. That's my question, and I think it's a pertinent question, for the record.
Somebody answer it, please.
Yes, basically, if you have a grant of planning permission, then ultimately that has a finite period it would run, which in most instances would be 3 years. If at the end of that period there was no indication that that was going to go ahead, then other proposals would be looked at, but it would have to be factored in that it's a private civil matter where there could be a change in National Trust policy at any moment, which could then result in it proceeding. So yes, I think that it would count as being a planning permission within that small building group, which would take up a certain degree of allocation as long as it remained valid.
And it's very similar. I mean, anybody can put a planning application in, even if that land isn't theirs. Is that based on the same sort of information you're giving us here? Regardless who owns the land, you can put a planning application forward, and we have to, look at that on the merits of that application.
Yes, indeed, it's much the same. But as you rightly say, you don't need to own a piece of land to apply for planning permission. And once planning permission is granted, it runs with the land, not with the owner of the land or the developer. So anybody can buy it and take it over. So yeah, yes is the short answer.
Come back to Councillor Geddes now.
Thanks very much, sir. So, in other words, standing the comments that I've made, would you accept that it's imprecise to say that this is a wholly separate issue and has no relevance in relation to the grant of planning consent? Manifestly, I would put it to you, Chairman, that it could have.
Councillor McCourt.
Just on this thing with the National Trust, I'm quite sure if it's something that dates back to 1945, that this so-called conservation agreement would actually be a few, or what they call a right of inheritance. And I think that the Few Act of 2001 abolished all such rights. I don't think that anybody who claimed to be a few superior saying you can't build on this land forever and a day. I think the 2001 Act abolished that, so I think that's a red herring there, quite frankly. But it's a civil matter anyway, but I don't think it's pertinent.
If you lived in Gatehouse, you wouldn't think it was a separate item, I can tell you. Or parts of Whithorn. Any other questions for the officer? Councillor Gilroy.
Thank you. It's on General Policy 16, which is referred to in here, where at 4.4 it says that it would normally be 2 houses that would be added, and in 4.6 it's 4, and it's a departure from the terms of General Policy 16. And I just wonder why you have to take that departure, because as we see, it's quite a bad road. There's a sort of small building group there already. That's going to take it up, by my maths, to about 11 houses in that area, and there's talk about street lighting, which I hope will be absolutely not condoned in any way from our roads officers. But I'm just wondering why you're quite happy to almost double what would be accepted in that policy. And the other thing is, with putting 4 in, why is the affordable housing thing not kicking in?
Chair, quite happy to answer those questions. Looking at the numbers in General Policy 16, relevant paragraphs of 4.4, 4.5 and 4.6 in the report. In terms of the supplementary guidance which was brought in, there hasn't been supplementary guidance, planning guidance, sorry, number 3.3, there hasn't been any application within this building group since that came in, so there hasn't been any existing development over and above when it was allocated as a small building group. It's really a combination of, we feel this is a sensitive and cohesive approach. It's designed, in my view, quite sympathetically to local characters and styles, albeit in a contemporary manner. It doesn't try and replicate traditional designs, but it does keep a general proportion and kind of theme and finish. In this case, the landscape treatment's also been very sensitive when you look at the boundaries of this site and the clustering of these houses relative to the existing kind of nucleus of the group that you've got here at the lower level, the kind of clacking part, if you like, of Girton. We feel it's quite cohesive, sits well in the landscape, and feel that the fundamental form, character and general appearance of the small building group is not adversely affected or eroded. But if you look at General Policy 16 strictly in terms of what it says, then it is a departure from the policy in that respect. As far as affordable housing goes, present policy states that you would only look for a contribution for a scheme of 5 or more dwelling houses. This obviously falls just below the threshold.
Any further questions for the officers at this stage? No, okay. We have 2 speakers, Sheena McCurragh. Somebody switch on the microphone. Switch on the microphone, please, Tracy. You're tuned in. You have 3 minutes, madam.
Right. I've got several points I'd like to make. I'm a resident of Girton, and it's a quiet rural hamlet of about 18 dwellings. But before I make the points, I would just like to ask for some reassurance from the chair, because there was an article appeared in the Galloway News last week in which the Mr. Armstrong, who I believe is applying for permission, says this covenant that you were speaking of is a civil matter and not relevant to the planning application. And later, your own planning department said this is a civil matter which does not have bearing on the outcome of this planning application. One could be forgiven for thinking that they're the same authors. Could I have your assurance that there would be no collusion at all between the applicant and the planning department?
You're not supposed to ask me questions, but anyway, I will answer as best I can, in as much as I don't read the Galloway News, so I didn't see the article, but I did read the report, and my knowledge of Gatehouse, I would agree that it is a separate item, totally irrelevant to the planning application.
It's irrelevant, you say?
It is not connected to the planning application. It is a separate item altogether.
Right. Well, I find it quite difficult to understand that, but anyway, I'll move on. I would like the committee to be aware that since moving to Girton in May of this year, we've been surprised to find that the main B727 road, which is the one leading down from the A75 on that plan, has been flooded and rendered impossible to vehicles more than 8 times. When I say flooded, I don't mean there are just puddles on the road. I'm talking about 4 to 18 inches of water. The alternative route via Renton Farm and the Cream of Galloway Centre is in a very poor state of repair. The access of off the road towards the development is, as you have already pointed out, just past a very dangerous blind bend on a crossroads where accidents have happened. And we're very alarmed to see, therefore, that no valid objections on these points alone have been made by your own Highways Department. The other point I would like to make is that of the 18 dwellings in Glencairn, only 4 are occupied permanently, which is less than 25%. In the Gatehouse area, there are 20 to 30 properties on the market at the present time, many of which have been for sale for more than 2 years. In Kirkcudbright, those numbers could be trebled. You may also be aware that bookings for holiday accommodation are down in the area by an average 30 to 40%. Therefore, I would like the committee to seriously consider whether there is a need for more housing in this area at all. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. Any questions for the lady? No, thank you. You can take your seat again. I have another speaker here, Graham Ditchburn. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Good afternoon. The proposal presented to you today has been informed by a proactive, consultative approach involving early discussions with the planners, Roads Department, SEPA, Scottish Water, amongst others. These are described in the planning statement accompanying the application. It's taken several years and a considerable investment of resources to reach this point. A central outcome of the discussions is the concept of the designed group, with the dwellings sharing a common architectural language and designs which address the site topography and draw reference from the surrounding built context. The result is a sensitive and appropriate extension to the existing cluster of buildings. These 4 houses have been laid out to form a natural rounding off of the existing group, recognising the comment made by the planners at the pre-application stage that this development would form a limit to development in the small building group. The alternative approach of developing sites separately would potentially have resulted in sites being developed with different designs and would have offered a more disjointed and less coherent end result. We have offered counter-arguments, which are detailed in the report, to those objections raised against the proposals. In fact, many of the issues have already been addressed at the outset. For example, we carried out flood risk assessment prior to submission of the application, and the design is informed by the outcome of that. And we've addressed concerns about road safety through seeking advice from the Council's roads officers. Again, all in line with our proactive approach. The officers' report, I feel, is a comprehensive and objective assessment of the proposals in relation to the Council's planning policy, and I urge members to support the proposal on the basis of this information. If you have any questions relating to the proposal, I'll be happy to try and answer them now.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. Ditchburn? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to ask you, obviously any kind of building on this site would be conditional on the National Trust approving it. I mean, why would you go to a lot of trouble and expense without first exploring if that was a possibility?
On the one hand, I'm not perhaps best placed as architect and agent for the application to comment on the kind of on a legal matter. But since you've asked the question, it's not our intention, it's not the applicant's intention to brush the matter aside. And in fact, the applicant, through its solicitor, has made approaches to the National Trust to open up, negotiations on that, going back to 2009. At the time, his solicitor attempted to contact Mr. Castles, who I believe lodged an objection to this application, tried to contact him several times without success. And it was thought at the time that the National Trust probably wouldn't weren't willing to kind of negotiate or really enter into a discussion until there was a serious proposal put forward and that the planning position had been resolved.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Richburn? No, sir. Thank you. You can take your seat, sir. Thank you. Mr. Duncan, perhaps you would like to address the point that the first speaker made.
Yes, thank you. The newspaper article appeared in the Galloway News in last week's edition, which was published on the 6th of December. I did happen to see a copy of the article. It looked to me like it had been assembled from the council's website. So the reporter had taken chunks from the report and the content of it and put those into the article. I suspect that's why the applicant is saying the same thing that's in the report, because they've taken it from the same report that was on the council's website. But I can't say for sure, but that's what I think is the case.
Councillor Geddes.
Yeah, but surely the important point to make, sir, is that the lady asked a specific question as to whether or not there was collusion. The answer has got to be, looking at Mr. Duncan via yourself, sir, is that surely the reassurance must be that there was no such collusion, nor would there be such collusion. And I think it would be in the interest of all concerned if that were made clear and unequivocal, sir, in the response.
So sorry, my apologies. I should have made that clear. No, there has not been any collusion. It would be against both the case officer and my own professional code of conduct to collude with an applicant.
Okay. We're in session, ladies and gentlemen. Councillor Gilroy.
I have a slight problem with this because it's deviating from our policy as General Policy 16, and it's also deviating from our supplementary planning guidance number 3.3, which is 4.3. I just don't quite understand why we're doing it, because I'd have thought, looking at that picture, for instance, 1 and 2 finish off the grouping, if you like. I don't actually see what 3 and 4 add to the party at all. So I would have thought if we'd stuck with our policy and had 2 in there, that would have been more appropriate. So I have quite a difficulty in understanding why we've gone for 4 houses here instead of the 2, which would have been in our policy. Also, the flooding down that road is bad too. You know that we often get complaints from the community council. It gets up very high. That is quite a genuine problem.
Councillor Geddes.
I'm going to be a bit concerned today, Chairman. This is not the first time Councillor Gilroy and I have been of d'accord. But seriously, I mean, I do take the point, particularly in relation to Plot 4, because to me, you know, I've listened to the mantra over the years of ribbon development is bad, and, you know, coalescence is bad, etc. And it would seem to me that, you know, you could argue that possibly Plot 4 was something extending towards ribbon development. It's extending that you know, that there's not a boundary. It doesn't have a boundary, but it's extending it. You know, it's accommodation on that particular side of the road out with the other group. And as I say, I certainly agree with 1 and 2. Possibly stretch the point and go as far as 3. But I am just a wee bit concerned, and I share Councillor Gilroy's concern, and certainly in relation to Plot 4, Chairman.
Councillor McKee.
Councillor Geddes also raised another issue there. There's no identifiable boundary. And we know what has happened in the past when there's no identifiable boundary. Yep, exactly. To me, that plot at the other side of the road beside the church would have been more appropriate. There again, you'd have the effect on the remains of the old church. So I'm not entirely convinced that that's an appropriate area to be building houses.
Councillor McCall.
Thank you, Chair. There's a very interesting submission by Gatehouse of Fleet Community Council. They state an objection, but in section C, they make the point that they support, they wish to record their support for the design of these units, which are a very attractive contemporary interpretation of traditional rural dwellings. To me, they are in keeping with the rest of the housing group. The housing density is very similar to the houses on the other side of the road. I think it would be quite appropriate for this development.
Councillor Geddes.
Can I say for the record, sir, I have no difficulties whatsoever with the proposed house type. In fact, I would certainly echo Councillor McComb's sentiments and commend the Gatehouse Community Council for their observation. I think it's very much in point, Chairman. It's just the issue of, 4 as against perhaps maybe 3 or 1 or 2.
Well, if no one else, sorry, it was okay, Councillor Gilroy.
I would put forward that we actually refuse this application on the grounds that it deviates and departs from General Policy 16 and also from our supplementary planning guidance number 3.3. And that there isn't a good enough case put forward for it to have this departure, if that is competent.
Have you got a Councillor Dryborough?
Thanks, Chair. And I listened to what Councillor McComb said, and I'm looking at this whole thing and the issue of the civil case, and that just, I think, just sort of blurred the edges of the planning side of things that we've got to look at. And I think looking at this report and seeing what's, I'm happy to go with the officer's recommendations, and I would put that forward as an amendment.
Any? Does Councillor Dryborough have a seconder? Councillor McComb. Councillor Geddes?
Well, clarification, sir. I'm not suggesting for one moment that we're horse trade. At the end of the day, there's no possibility, as it were, of sort of reducing the number slightly. I know that's not what the motion says. You're, through you, sir, with your leave, you're moving, in fact, that we refuse in its entirety. Thank you.
We have a motion, we have an amendment. No counter amendments? Clear.
Chairman, I have a motion by Councillor Gilroy, seconded by Councillor McKee, to refuse the application on the grounds of General Policy 16. And did I pick you up right, Councillor Gilroy? Planning Guidance 2.3? 3.3. The amendment by Councillor Dryborough, seconded by Councillor McComb, is to approve the application subject to the conditions set out in the report. So the motion is to refuse, the amendment is to approve. Chairman? Vice Chairman? Councillor Dryborough? Councillor Geddes? Councillor Gilroy? Councillor McCottrey? Councillor McComb? Councillor McKee? Councillor Maitland? Councillor Thompson? There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 votes for the motion, 1, 2, 3, 4 votes for the amendment, and 1 abstention. The motion is carried. Therefore, the application is refused on the grounds of General Policy 16 and Plan Guidance 3.3.
Okay, item 7 on the agenda. Erection of a wind turbine 27 metres to blade tip and associated meter housing at Ratra Farm, Borg, Kirkcudbright. Judith, it's you again.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, this is an application for a turbine and meter housing at Ratra Farm near Borg. The site's about 2.5 kilometres west of the village of Borg and about 500 metres north of the C8, which is the Borg to Barnhill Road that goes round the coast. The site itself is about 60 metres south of the farm. That's that's 60 metres from the silage pits, which are the square outlines to the south of the farm at the top of the image. There's not actually be done on that one. This is the turbine elevations. It's 18.8 metres to the hub and 27 metres to the tip with a 16.5 metre diameter rotor. Sorry. This is the ZTV, showing the theoretical visibility of the turbine. The views are generally contained to within 4 or 5 kilometres in views from the northeast round to the south. That's That's because the application site is set on the side of a ridge, on the eastern side of a ridge that runs up, and there's a wide valley that extends across towards east, towards Borg. And the views are from, as you come over the hill out of Borg, the views are from there right across the valley round to the south. And there's also glimpses in views from the north up into the Glengap Hills. That's the sort of sporadic blue going up towards the edge. And there are views mainly of the blades to the northwest. And there's a small area of visibility to the southwest, and that goes right across Wigton Bay into Wigtonshire. This is a cumulative to 5 kilometres. We have 8 turbines granted consent within 5 kilometres of the application site. If I take you down to the one of 2 kilometres, there are 3 turbines granted consent within this area. There's one, if I can just show you. One round there, which was a 97 permission, which has lapsed. This is an application, the 2 red ones is an application that was refused at Ingleston for 2 39-metre turbines. We have one up here at Colt Cottage. It's about, 15 or 20, I think 20 metres, to tip, which was approved by committee. And there's an older one at Bridgend of Kildara. Considering the cumulative impact of these other turbines, given the distance, they're both of the 2 that are granted and implemented, the distance is more than 1 kilometre away, and it's considered that there's no cumulative issues given the intervening topography and the distance of these turbines. Moving on to the images, this is taken looking over the application site, which is just beyond the corner of the fence to the right-hand side of the image. That's looking down, and I expect the view that gives us the visibility over the bay to Wigtonshire. This is looking southwest. This is a view north from the site. That's the buildings of Ratra Farm and the views up to the hills up at Glengap. I'm sorry these are a bit dark. I did ask the chap that did the presentation to maybe lighten them, but he assured me they would be lighter on the big screen, so apologies for this. This is a view east from the site, and there's a small ridge just next to the application site, so it's kind of blocked by that. But the views are over to a ridge which is about 4 or 5 kilometres. That's the visibility you saw in the ZTV over in the distance. This is an image to show the Ratra. It was quite difficult with the trees to show the scale of the buildings at Ratra Farm. This is a view of the farm from the C8, from about Ingleston, where I showed you that the two turbines were refused. That's looking up towards the farm. I consider the landscape and visual impact of the turbine, and it's going to be 60 metres to the left-hand side of the farm buildings, and it will be backclot against the trees behind. And I consider that the scale of the turbine against the farm buildings is not unacceptable. I think it's acceptable in this instance. The IPP mentions about putting turbines next to intimate landscapes and small buildings and small building groups, but I consider the scale of Ratra Farm is large, has large buildings and silage pits and I consider the landscape impact to be acceptable. So just to conclude, for the reasons detailed in the report, it's recommended that this application be approved subject to conditions.
Thank you. Any questions for the officer at this stage? Councillor McKee.
There's no mention of colour of the turbine, I noticed. Have you any idea what you might suggest? A dark colour, I think, would blend in probably a lot better.
Thank you. There was no details of the finishes given with the submissions, so there's a condition 3 requests that the finishes, colour and precise colour and finish of the external components of the wind turbine be approved.
Any other questions for the officer at this stage? Okay, nothing, thank you. We have 4 speakers on this item. First one is Mrs. Coles. Mrs. Coles, you have 3 minutes this time.
Thank you. I object to this development of an 88 feet high turbine as it's within the regional scenic area and visible from a national scenic area. It would have an adverse impact on the scenic beauty of the area, the whole reason why it's been designated. Now, policy states that there must be a need for this development at that location, which couldn't be located in a less sensitive area. Well, electricity generation is not needed at this location. The farm has power already. It would be more efficiently and better sited elsewhere. One more turbine at Clyde would replace all the smaller turbines which are spoiling Dumfries and Galloway's regional scenic areas. And we must remember that this is in a landscape capacity which has a high to medium sensitivity to turbines of this height. Now, in the case officer's report, there's a misunderstanding about the process. It states in paragraph 1.3 that the electricity produced would be used on the farm and then any left over would be sold to the grid. All the electricity produced by the turbine is sold to the grid at an enhanced premium rate. Currently, this turbine would get 21 pence per kilowatt hour, supported by the feed-in tariffs. The electricity the farm uses is all bought from the grid, just as they do at the moment. Well, I pay at the moment 13 pence per kilowatt hour. They might have even been able to get a cheaper rate. It's a far cheaper price they buy electricity than they sell it for. There is no need for them to produce electricity. It can be done outside the regional scenic area. The random and sporadic proliferation of individual turbines destroys more landscape than the grouping of them in established wind farms. They have a greater output potential. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Coles. Any questions for Mrs. Coles? No. Thank you very much, Mrs. Coles. You can take your seat. Mr. Davison.
Thank you. I'm a chartered surveyor with over 25 years experience, having dealt with a variety of different properties, including licensed trade, leisure and tourist related. Planner's recommendation to approve his application relies, in my view, on several flawed arguments and dismisses valid reasons for objection without offering any justification or evidence. The site lies within the Solway Coast Regional Scenic Area, and the planner, section 4.13, fails to comprehend the cumulative detrimental effect that these turbines are already having on the character and amenity of the area. The nearby turbines at Coat Cottage and Gled Park are mentioned only in passing, but the grantings of these permissions will have influenced her decision to recommend approval. One more granted consent in such close proximity has self-evidently a cumulative and detrimental effect on the character of the scenic area. Planner somehow contrives to ignore the fact that there is a popular circular walk from Chapelton Road via Ratra, now to a degree already blighted by the turbines at Colt Cottage and Gled Park. She elects to consider views from more obscure roads and angles, other than considering the devastating effect on the character of the landscape heading east to west on the coastal road and national cycle route 7. The planner's narrative I find to be rather confused and possibly deliberately misleading. For example, to justify the proposed height of 27 metres from ground to blade tip, she uses the footprint, not the height, of existing farm buildings at Ratra. So when a footprint of 30 metres by 70 metres is quoted within her report, it appears that the proposed turbine is relatively small, smaller than the existing buildings. In reality, it will tower above them, and particularly so because it's situated on an elevated site that will dominate the landscape. The planner, in my view, recklessly dismisses Section 416, talk of the adverse effects on tourism, without any competent analysis of the issue. Most obviously, she appears oblivious to the well-documented campaigns by Alex Ferguson, MSP, and Russell Brown, MP, for a moratorium on further applications of this type of development for exactly this reason.
You have 30 seconds, Mr. Davis.
As a chartered surveyor, I appreciate the adverse effect these turbines can have on property values, communities and tourism. For example, in parts of Ayrshire, communities are being badly affected by turbine developments. Second homeowners are exiting the market, meaning the surplus of properties available is flooding the market, driving prices downwards. These properties prove difficult to shift and lie empty. Local community, shops, cafes and hotels lose out on much needed income, continuing to a downward spiral. Any development should be sustainable. Sustainability of wind farms and turbines is highly questionable.
Could you wind up, please, sir?
I am. These developments are pockmarking a beautiful landscape and risk the long-term sustainability of the well-established local tourist industry, so important for this area. I hope it will therefore be rejected.
Thank you, sir. Any questions from Mr. Davison? No. Thank you, sir. You can take your seat. Russell Malach, please. Mr. Malach, you have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. I believe the Ratra application must be refused as the case officer has been misdirected on policy and reached conclusions without supporting evidence, while the environmental report lacks credibility as the author VG Energy is a principal selling agent for the Polaris turbine. 14 grounds for refusal are set out in the report before you at page 112, and I ask you to support each of those grounds as being material considerations that would allow you to turn down the application. Beyond that, time only allows me to highlight a few points that would justify your rejection of the application. As the report explains, Ratra needs to be read in the context of the Solway Coast and Fleet Valley scenic areas, as the farm lies at the heart of an area of outstanding natural beauty. The case officer has, however, failed to understand the high landscape and visual sensitivities of this area, implying that the turbine would blend in with the farm, even after acknowledging, as you saw in the diagram, that it would be seen from the far side of Wigton Bay. Ratra consists of low, traditional level buildings, again as you saw from the photograph, and so a 90-foot moving structure on its elevated platform would intrude a large vertical element into an essentially open and settled landscape and would significantly be out of scale with local landform and features. It would in layman's terms stick out like a sore thumb. The turbine would not be visible from Borg, the village, but there are 83 homes excluding the village within a 2-kilometre radius of Ratra, and yet the report has failed to address any detrimental effect on residential amenity. And again, I would contrast with what you heard this morning about Mayfield. When there were 29, there are 83 homes and no reference to residential amenity. The report claims that the area's existing turbines would be read as distinct from Ratra. This claim is disputed as anyone travelling along National Cycle Route 7 or the 2 adjoining country roads would encounter a combination of the Colt Cottage, Rainton and Ratra turbines, also the Gled Park one that Mr Davison mentioned, which the case officer didn't even refer to today. So there are other turbines there that we haven't heard, proving that the applicant turbine would create an adverse cumulative effect. The report says there's no evidence of adverse effect on tourism and recreational use, despite the absence of any site-specific evidence being provided by the applicant. In many ways, I would refer you back to what Mr Keith said this morning for Mayfield there was a thing for tourism writ large, despite the fact you've got MPs' petitions and public statements which indicate that turbines can harm sensitive landscapes, such as we found at Ratra. I therefore ask you to reject the report's claims and to resist the further march of medium-sized turbines into the area with no realistic climate change advantage in return. I work as a trade sector lead for the energy sector for a very large government department, and therefore probably qualified to talk about both climate change and energy sector policy. So I'm saying this from a point of view of some expertise, I think. The proposal is not consistent with planning law or planning policy and guidelines, and there are material considerations which override any presumption in favour of the applicant. Again, picking up what Mr Thompson said to you this morning, it's the wrong development. Sorry. As Mr Thompson said to you this morning in relation to Mayfield, it's the wrong development in the wrong place. Mayfield was large, this is small, but again, it's still the wrong one. Again, I think that the committee therefore has compelling grounds for rejecting the proposal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions for Mr Malach? No? Okay, thank you, sir. You can take your seat.
Thank you.
Now hear from Mr Cruikshanks, the applicant. Mr Cruikshanks, you've 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. My name is William Cruikshanks. I am the applicant and I have lived and worked at Ratra all my life. Ratra is a family-run dairy farm and the business is carried on in a partnership with my son and myself. As a dairy farm, we use a substantial amount of electricity for milking, cooling milk, heating water, etc. So when the government-backed renewable energy scheme was announced, it seemed sensible to get on board and try to erect a farm-sized wind turbine which would generate enough power for the farm and also some surplus which could be sold into the national grid. This would save us money and reduce our overall carbon footprint, which we dairy farmers are encouraged to do. We identified what we think is a good site and submitted our first application to planning almost 2 years ago in January 2011. Since then, we have been working with the planning officers trying to find a turbine which would be acceptable for our situation. The main issue has been visual impact, and we have addressed this by lowering the overall height to its minimum of 27 metres. Visual impact is a very subjective concept. I believe that one man's eyesore is another man's point of interest. It has been difficult trying to conform with regulations and requirements which have been changing all the time. But today, we are happy to present a proposal which is recommended by the planning officer, and I ask the members of the committee for their approval. Thank you. There are representatives from our agents who are prepared to answer technical questions if necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Cruikshanks. Any questions for Mr Cruikshanks? Councillor Gilroy.
Thank you. Cruikshanks, you mentioned about creating electricity because you use quite a lot on your farm, which I can quite understand. Mrs Cole said that actually you wouldn't be storing or using that electricity, it would all be going onto the grid. But I noticed in the report here you are going to have a substation there, is that correct?
Yes, it'll be fed into our meter position.
It is?
And used on farm.
On farm. That's it.
Any other questions from Mr Cruikshanks? No. Okay. Thank you, Mr Cruikshanks. You can take your seat. We're in session. Members? Councillor Driver.
Thanks, Chair. And mention was made of an earlier planning application which was 130 metres high, which is a big difference compared to a 27 metre turbine. I think in the case where we talk about diversity of farms and things like that, then we've got to look at this application with some merit. Given the overall report and looking at that, I'm quite prepared to go along with the officer's recommendations on this particular report.
Councillor Maitland.
I remember as a child going over the Fenwick Moor, and there were all over the place. The place was peppered with quote-unquote farm-sized windmills, albeit of a different type and design, I accept. But I am prepared to say that I think this is actually also acceptable size-wise, scale-wise, and links appropriately with the industry with which it is connected. And I'm quite happy to go along with the recommendation.
You go over the Fenwick Moor now, they're bigger. Councillor Geddes.
Agree. Well, no, I don't agree. Fenwick Moor, I don't want to make any comment on the Fenwick Moor. I would support Councillor Driver entirely. I think we should be adopting this recommendation, granting this application on the basis of the recommendations set out at Section 5 of the report.
Any other comments from members? Okay.
Chairman, the application has been approved subject to the conditions as set out at 5.1 in the report.
Okay, next item on the agenda, I think Mr McComb, you've declared an interest in this one. Erection of 12 floodlights on six-metre high columns at Wigton Mugger, Kilhorn Road, Wigtown. Robert, proceed now, I think.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, the case officer can't be here today. It wasn't felt efficient for him to attend. So in his absence, I'll present the slides. The first slide, this is looking in a northerly direction, so you're looking over the existing play area. If you look at the location plan on page 121, this is looking across what's described as the tennis court, which is in the middle ground, and the fenced areas around the actual multi-use games area itself. This is from the northeast at a higher level, looking towards the rear of the properties in Lightlands Avenue, so you can see those in the middle ground of this photograph, and it shows the relationship. The turbines would be, sorry, not the turbines, the floodlights, Freudian slip, would be on 6 columns, located 3 one side, 3 the other. I could do. This is a view again from the northeast. It's looking towards the southwest. Again, it's showing the properties in the lower section of Lightlands Avenue and also Lightlands Terrace on the left-hand side. This is from the southeast. You can see the multi-use games area with the fence round about it, looking towards the rear of the properties on Fountainblue Terrace, which is located to the north. And then, again, showing the relationship of these properties in the rear garden areas to the multi-use games area. This is from the northwest. It shows the relationship to the rear boundaries of the properties on Lightlands Avenue, which you can see in the background of this shot. Moving to location and block plans, it just shows you the site in its context. Again, you've got the play area and the former tennis court to the south, but you can see the relationship of residential properties and the rear garden areas, both to the north and to the west and the southeast. Looking at the actual floodlighting layout, it doesn't show it terribly clearly, but essentially you're looking at 3 equally spaced columns on either side of that multi-use games area, with each column accommodating 2 floodlights, which are of this type of design. And there's obviously comment on these floodlight units in the report, both from the Council's Environmental Standards Officer as well as from DG First Street Lighting. In general terms, there has been some concern about the impact of these lights. I'm satisfied the case officer has taken a cautious approach, has engaged all of the relevant parties. It's also noted that the proposal has support from the Community Council. And in summary, the recommendation is to approve subject to the conditions listed.
Thank you. There's reference made to the lit park in the objectors. Could you give me some indication as to where the lit park is? I presume when it says a lit park, it means it's lighted.
I don't know what the reference is to, no. I'm sorry.
The only place I could have thought was Travernford Park down at the football pitch. Anyway, members, any questions for Robert? Patsy?
It's just one thing about the timings, Duncan. Do they come on automatically regardless of whether anybody's using the mugger? Or is it on demand that the lights come on? Because there's nothing worse than them seeing them there on from 6 till 4 till 10 and actually nobody playing on the pitch. I just wonder how that works.
I understand, the relevant part in the case officer's report is at 4.6. Halfway down the paragraph it says use of the MUGA is presently managed by the council and would only be by arrangement for authorised groups or individuals, so it is managed. It would be a condition of use that lights were extinguished on departure and never used later than 10 o'clock. So you shouldn't take the times as being continuous usage of lighting. It will be intermittent, but within that period of time, but it will be managed, yes.
Recommendations to approve. Councillor Geddes? Councillor McKee?
It's just it's strange that they didn't want to take it for weekends. I thought that may be kind of strange. Monday to Friday. So it's kind of restricted, but if they're quite happy with that, I'm quite happy to go along with the recommendations.
Councillor Geddes?
I think we should tell them so that they're strong in the Lord's Day observance in Whitetown.
Okay, we agreed. Clear.
Agreed. Chairman, the application is agreed subject to the conditions listed at 5.1 in the report.
Thank you. Item 9 is the erection of 3 vertical axis wind turbines. Well, so high, we better have them back, I suppose. We could have a wee sing-song till he comes. Or... Well, it's been recorded, we better know. I said the glass to the door, Tom. Okay, item 9 is the erection of 3 vertical axis wind turbines, 18 metres mast height, 23 metres in total height, and associated control cabinet at Glenluce Primary School, School Road, Glenluce. Mr. Duncan.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I'll present the slides for this one today in the absence of the case officer. Quickly looking at the slides, members will note from the background of the report there was a previous application which went to this committee again on the basis it was a council application for 3 slightly smaller turbines. What you're looking at now, so the previous one was for 4. And it was on this kind of arrangement next to the primary school. Present application has changed. You'll see the location plan on page 127. Slightly different application site, and this is for 3 turbines which are slightly larger, albeit of a similar type, and that's the type that you see here, which is known as a vertical axis turbine. You've essentially got 3 slanted rotors, if you like, and these operate on a drum-like basis around a vertical pole, for want of a better description. Looking at the photographs of the site, you have the A75 descending to Stranraer. On the left-hand side, you can just see the primary school on the right-hand side of this photograph in the middle distance, and that is the location of the proposed turbines. This is a closer view, just again showing it from a similar viewpoint. This is a view looking towards the application site. In the context of it, you're really not going to be looking at something that we would anticipate being visible from a wider perspective. This is a view in the opposite direction. You're looking at the A75 on the right-hand side here. It shows that there's a large bank of trees at the moment when you're travelling in this direction, and that will largely serve to screen the site. A view looking across now from the A75, so this is looking in a northerly direction towards the application site, and again it's trying to emphasise the number of mature trees you have in this location. Another view, this is actually from you'll see the 30-mile-an-hour limit on the left-hand side as you come into Glenluce. This is looking generally towards the southeast, and you can see the application site in the middle distance. Again, the trees will substantially obscure the visibility of these turbines. That's a closer view. That's from within Glenluce itself at the lower level, looking up towards the school, and just again it shows the location of trees intervening. This view is looking across to the application site. I believe this is from the A75. I couldn't vouch for that, but again, it's looking towards the application site and it's not clearly visible from that location. And a similar viewpoint. Moving to the school grounds, this is looking towards the location of the 3 proposed turbines, which would be on the edge of the playing field area, if you like. And another view, again, showing closer range view of these turbines. And an extreme close range view showing where they would be located. So very much on the edge of the school grounds. And that's just really showing the context of the turbines in the application site. The recommendation, given the similarities to the previous scheme and the lack of concerns, lack of objection to this application, recommendations to approve subject to the conditions listed.
Thank you. Councillor McKee.
That turbine again, it says 18-metre mast and 23 in total height. It didn't say about that far above the mast. Just when you're doing that, when you're putting the turbines up, when you paint the goalposts, stay please.
This turbine, my understanding of it is, as you look at this, you've got the mast which goes and where it connects with the underside of what's referred to as the drum-like structure. It's 18 metres to the underside of that
to the bottom
junction. To about there, I think, is 18 metres, and the rest of it is the 5-metre part.
That'll fairly mince the football up. It gets up in it. Any other? Councillor McComb.
Thank you, Chair. I'm glad that the overall height is no greater than 23 metres, because although the turbines are not excessively high, the site is extremely prominent. You're actually sitting just above the river bluffs, and anyone approaching from the west would undoubtedly, tend to see turbines. That the site is fairly prominent when viewed from the west. Certainly further back along the bypass, the photographs taken were close enough for the trees to obscure, but further back, I suspect there would be some degree of visibility.
Any other members? Councillor Driver.
Chair, I'm happy going with the recommendation, but I believe there was something mentioned at Policy and Resources last week with regard to turbine, a wind turbine that was going to be built by the council, and there was some issues with that particular. Not a planning issue, but there is something there.
Yes. Right. Any other relevant comments? Some recommendations to approve. Agreed. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, folks. Safe journey home and a good Christmas. We'll hopefully see you early in the new year for the Iron House application.